Hey guys, so it's that time of the week. It is time for your week in review with co-host Michael Gross. And as always, we cover everything A to Z and everything in between. Things that you didn't even think you'd hear on this show, we cover. So get yourselves strapped in. We cover Raw, we cover SmackDown, we look ahead to Extreme Rules, and even preview a little bit of SummerSlam and how some of the matches and programs could lead all the way to that point in a month or so. So this is a great show, very long show, but if you love long-form audio, let's get rolling right now.
Welcome to the WWE Podcast, the most passionate and authentic wrestling analysis on the web. We've got you covered with every Raw, SmackDown, and NXT show, giving you a no bullshit opinion. We know you love wrestling. We do too. So let's get this show underway.
And that's the bottom line. What? Because Stone Cold said so.
Welcome to the WWE Podcast, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this Sunday, July 5th, 2020. Hope everybody had a great Independence Day, 4th of July, and stayed safe. And it's on to the next holiday, which, what is it? What's the next holiday? Oh my gosh, it's Labor Day, right? So we go from essentially the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer from holidays. So I hope everyone, again, is enjoying their time and staying safe. And I hope you're here for a long time and not just a good time, because we have one of the longest shows we ever produced ready for you with Michael Gross as the co-host this week. And so we're going to get to that. But first, I'd like to shout out to Jim, who's our newest patron on patreon.com. So you now have access to the entire library ad-free. So I hope you enjoy it. And thank you so much. And if you'd like to join Jim and others on the Patreon side of things where no ads are there, it's patreon.com/WWE podcast. Pretty simple, right? So check that out. We're also on Facebook. We're on Instagram at WWE_podcast on Instagram, and the WWE podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/the WWE podcast. And the website is wwepodcast.com. So boy, oh boy, are we in many, many places other than the beloved Twitter, which you all know the story there. F you, Twitter. Okay, so one thing that I'd like to kind of toss to you guys before we get things rolling. Michael Gross is looking for a nickname. He wants to know what you guys want his nickname to be. So if you want to give him a nickname, because you can't really self-appoint a nickname, it just kind of happens, right? And other people have to give it to you, is send it to his Twitter at 144captain. That's 144captain. That's his Twitter. So if you want to know what his nickname should be or have a suggestion, that's where you send it. So you can also email me, by the way, at realwwepodcast@gmail.com, which by also the same token, you can send me audio messages to get your voice on the show. So if you'd like to do that, that would be a good thing as well, because I'd like to have other voices on this show other than my own. So one last thing is, if you want your ad on this show, by the way, you can just head on over to Fiverr.com and it's username Matt3166. No, it's not WWE Podcast. I created this Fiverr account many, many years ago, and I just didn't have the WWE Podcast at the time. So that's the address, is Fiverr.com/Matt3166. If you want to get your ad on this show, you want me to do multiple spots, I can create a script for you. I can put you in the description of this show. Lots of other cool goodies and extras on my page, so check that out. But okay, let's get to it, guys. Michael and I discuss everything. Matt Riddle, we discuss Big Show and Randy Orton, Seth and his brilliance with Rey Mysterio. We talk about the Swamp Fight, Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles versus Drew Gulak, where the hell Shayna Baszler's been, when we expect Brock Lesnar back, Kofi Kingston and Nakamura, Undertaker, if he's truly done. I mean, again, guys, this is a very comprehensive podcast, but if you love long form, this is right up your alley. So, guys, again, I'll be back Tuesday with your Raw review. Wednesday is your NXT review. And oh, I'm so glad I remembered. I always say one last thing, but I promise this is it. If you're interested in doing an AEW review for this show, meaning your own podcast, minimum of 30 minutes, previous audio experience is strongly preferred, and you have a passion for wrestling, email me at realwwepodcast@gmail.com. We're looking right now for a AEW review host, if you will. It's not going to be with me. It's on your own. You do your own thing. Keep it PG. But you get your own podcast on this feed covering AEW only. So covering AEW Dynamite and any pay-per-views that happen, whatever time frames that they occur. So that's what I'm looking for. Our current AEW host is temporarily out. I don't know when he'll be back or if he'll be back. So check out my email or email me at realwwepodcast@gmail.com. If you think you could commit to a weekly 30-minute review minimum. It can be more, but I'd like 30 minutes or more on AEW Dynamite, and then any monthly pay-per-views or bi-monthly pay-per-views or whatever it may be that AEW presents. That's really the only requirements, and keep it PG for those that ask. But if you're interested, email me, and we'll get back to you. And by the way, looking to start as soon as this week, if you can. Alrighty, let's get to it. Michael and I discussing the entire week of WWE, including all the news and sexual assault allegations and all the lovely little dirt that comes out of the Wrestling Wire. So here we go. Everybody, thank you so much. I'll talk to you next time. Alrighty, this is your week in review, and I've got back with us on the show today, Michael, who's ready to roll. As we were discussing right off the air, you've got pages of notes. I've at least got a page, and I can read some of my handwriting, but not all of it. So this should be a fun show. Welcome back, Michael. I hope everything's going well.
Everything is going well, and thank you very much. I'm always humbled to be on the show. I just want to say that this is a great catharsis for everything that's going on right now, and I hope that we are reaching out to people who need to really just entertain their brains during a bad time. But with that being said, how are you? What's new?
Well, on a professional podcast level, we are trying to get video up and going, so that's that. On a personal level, I mean, I'm still home working at home, so that's not anything new. I think we're permanently teleworking from home, so that's fine with me, although I do want to get the hell out of the house sometimes. But yeah, I mean, especially in the wrestling world right now too, boy, oh boy, there is so much going on for no fans, essentially no fans being in an arena right now, so...
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's insane to me, like with the COVID outbreaks that they're having at the Performance Center. Obviously, I'm thinking that the whole continuance of basketball is not going to happen, but I can speculate all day, and that's not what we're here for. We're here to talk wrestling, and that's what's important. So I did have a couple questions that came my way, and I wanted to bounce them off you and see what you thought about them.
Yeah, go ahead. Shoot.
Okay. First question was from John Pelko, and it's actually part of the news that came out this week, but I still want to get your opinion on it. He wanted to see or thoughts on when he thought that Walter would come to the main roster and become a big major heel and a brick that no one can really touch, and basically the guy that they wish Lars Sullivan should have been. Also, though, we know in the news that it came out this week that Walter says he doesn't want to leave NXT UK because he has a lot of UK obligations, and that was part of his contract. Now, twofold. An NXT contract versus a main roster contract is a lot of hundreds of thousands of dollars difference. So, with that being said, could you see Walter eventually coming over, living in America, which is another part of the article that he said he didn't want to live in America, but coming to America and becoming a big star, or do you think he would be wasted and be the next Ludwig Borga?
Wow, loaded question. So first of all, let me just say this. I would love to see Walter on the main roster. I think there's a place for him. He has the look. He has everything that you need to be that monster heel. I would love it. Now, based on what the article that you're referring to, I did see, he said he would not move to America. And as the UK champ, I don't see him in the near term coming up to Raw or SmackDown. I believe that he has a nice little gig over there in his home country, and being the NXT UK champion and being able to be a big fish in a small pond. Now, with that said, do I think eventually, when I say eventually, in the next 2 to 3 years, see Walter being coerced into, or maybe changing his mind and coming up to the main roster? I would say, I would lean towards yes, because I think what's going to happen is Walter will kind of run the gamut, if you will. He'll go through everyone there is essentially to go through, and he'll look around and he'll look at himself and say, look, this is either my chance to make it or break it. I've gone through most of this roster. I need to, and hopefully he has this drive to try to make it at a higher level. And let's face it, NXT is, we don't like to refer to it as the minor leagues. It isn't. But we're still calling it NXT call-ups. So we're still having that perception of NXT being the feeding ground, if you will, for Raw and SmackDown. They just are. So again, this is a big personal decision for Walter, and he may never come up, but I think he will in the next 2 to 3 years, because I think he'll realize that the big money is there. But to your second part of the question, WWE, would they screw it up? We've seen it before. As you mentioned, we've seen them drop the ball big time before. Could this be another Heidenreich? Maybe, right? Like, they could really screw this up. So if they have a long-term plan and they're able to sell Walter on what exactly they're going to do with his character, and he makes the personal decision and speaks with his family, or I don't even know if he's married, to be honest, I'm not sure. But if he can make that personal decision to come to America, I think the real success will be on Raw or SmackDown in the big leagues. But he may end up being a forever big fish in a small pond in the UK in NXT.
I have to say that I really wish the best for him, because if he continues on the stance, eventually they'll probably let him go. But that's going to be years down the road. It's going to be main roster or hit the bricks. That's the way I see it. But what I really love about the fact that he was a guy that you could have seen against The Undertaker if you built it a couple of years ahead of time. He's that size. The guy can move. He's such a great competitor. And I really want to see Walter here in America. I want to see him we'll get to Randy Orton, the Big Show, later, but the Big Show and Walter stare down, think about that. That is money. It's you have the twilight of a career, and you've got the beginning of a megastar, and you believe this megastar can do it, and I really see so much.
Yeah.
So, all right, my other question for you, this comes from DJ Kuzma, a favorite listener of the show. He says that he believes that Corbin has kind of the same JBL heat from the SmackDown era pre-championship, and he believes that that he's being wasted, and what could be done to keep him from being just a human punching bag for all the wrestlers around.
Well, I've mentioned this before too. So here's the thing with Corbin. I love his work. I think he is, like, if you were going to give most improved wrestler over the last year, Corbin would be one of them, if not the one that would win the award in my book. And I really agree. I agree it's a shame that Corbin is being just wasted as a really kind of a throwaway heel on SmackDown, where they have very few heels that are of a top caliber. I mean, when you look at the roster, it's not exactly a very deep heel roster. Yeah, you have AJ Styles. But with Corbin, what they need to do, and I've said this in my last show a few days ago, that they need to just let him build heat. He needs to win some matches. I don't care if it's by hook or crook. He gets on a roll, and then he eventually gets henchmen. He has nobody to back him up. His King gimmick is very see-through. I want to actually... It's kind of laughable. It's not angering. I want to feel angry with a heel. I don't feel angry with Corbin. I just know I'm going to get a good promo, and he's ended up going to end up on his back at the end of the night. And more often than not, that's the case. They just never allow the heat to build for Corbin. He needs to go on weeks or months of a streak that is just blazing hot, where he just gets nuclear heat. He wins and wins and wins and wins, and you think he's going to lose, he wins again. And they just don't do that. They can't even go the same show without blowing off the heat on Corbin. They just can't help themselves for whatever reason of they got to put smiles on people's faces, or they want to make sure the crowd goes home happy. I don't know what the problem is, but I don't know why they don't take Corbin seriously and make him into a mega heel, which I think he could be, because he's really good on the mic and he's good in the ring. And he has a gimmick that is dislikable, but the problem is they don't allow the character to build heat. So when they blow off the heat in the same show and you continually see that, you look at him and go, you don't take him serious. So that's how I would do it. I would build up heat for weeks and weeks, if not months.
You've got a really good point there. My thought process with Corbin was when he first came up, I thought he was going to be pushed before Strowman, everybody else. They all had their spears and everything, and all those, I think it was like 2017, perhaps, building to the Royal Rumble, and he was the one who was looking like the badass, okay? So as the lone wolf, goes in there, beats up people, doesn't say a word, and leaves. Another person who never said a word in his initial first few months was Goldberg. And by hook or crook, we bought into it. And one way or another, it got over. And I think Corbin was getting over that way. And then once he shaved his head and started acting like a stooge, it killed him. Now, the direction I would have went, the stutter. The direction I would have went with him is that I would have, at his size, at his height, I would have still shaved the head. And instead of being Kurt Angle's lackey, I would have went like a Randy Orton legend killer, but instead he was a giant killer. Because, like I said, we'll get back to the big show, but he shouldn't be performing in main events. So go after the big show. Kane at this point was in Twilight. Go after Kane. Go after Taker. The 7-footers. That makes sense. He could have taken out Big Cass. That would have been a great write-off. So anybody who was like just that tall to dominate, and then you look at him as a king, and then he could have won King of the Ring and not wear the crown and the goofy pageantry, but just have this I've destroyed your legends, I've destroyed your giants, I'm the giant of giants. I'm the destroyer. Like, Arnold Schwarzenegger almost, kind of Conan stuff, but not campy, and I would buy it. And if he didn't lose to everybody every other week and act so silly with his scripted promos, yeah, he could be so main event in my opinion.
Yeah, he could. And so a couple things there, and then I'll close it off on my comments with Baron Corbin, is that why they're not owning the Kurt Angle win at WrestleMania is beyond me. That's very rarely brought up. I mean, until you just mentioned Kurt Angle and being his lackey, like I kind of forgot, and I have to be reminded. And a victory like that over a name like that at WrestleMania should be something that he brags about almost every time, and it doesn't get reminded to us. It doesn't get driven home with us. And it should, because that would, I think, legitimize the character instead of, as you called it, kind of being a joke character, which he is. And he has good delivery on his promos. They are scripted for sure. But there's something there that if they just really let him loose, he could be a monster heel. And they just, for whatever, put him in this king gimmick. It worked for Booker T. Booker T, though, was kind of lightning in a bottle with that thing. I mean, doing the whole... being a king of the ring is truly getting to your head, and now you think you're truly a king and you're delusional. Booker T covered that very well. Booker T was masterful with it. It actually transformed his career with Queen Charmel, that whole thing. And they seem to have taken that same road with Baron Corbin, except, number one, he's not Booker T, and Booker T is, I think, much more talented. But they don't have anything. They don't have anybody with him. He has no royal party, so to speak. He has nobody to back him up. If he had a little bit of backup, or if he had somebody to take his hits for him, maybe there'd be a little more heat. But he's always out there alone, just getting put on his back, and it's hard to watch because you see so much potential on a very thin heel SmackDown roster.
No, you're absolutely right. And I would love for him to just go psycho, like out of his gourd, and make his own belt with like a King of the Ring kind of, and turn it into a TV championship, which is something that I've been wanting for a long time because it's an easy way to book a main event. But the point is, he just goes nuts and he's like, yeah, I'm the King of the Ring. I'm the King of the Ring. And he just loses it, takes his crown off, looks in the mirror, and just says, or am I a joke? And then creates a belt, and then even a promo with Vince McMahon. What does the King of the Ring mean? Like, ask him. Like, what does it really mean? What if I won a tournament? Does that make me a king? And then create a new title instead of that 24/7 god-awful garbage that has to be defended every time he's on TV, and just destroy people over and over again. And I wouldn't do just the, he wins with a chokeslam or a powerbomb or the end of days or the, deep six. I would have him just after the bell, like they have to call people in, and maybe even have a commissioner come in and say, if you don't stop brutalizing these people after the bell, we're going to have to suspend you. And that will make Baron Corbin.
Yes. And that's the thing. Maybe there's no dark side to him. It's very kind of jokey. It's easily see-through. It's very surface level type of character. There's really no depth. And if we saw a dark side to him, we're right. He did something that was just dastardly. Instead of pouring dog food on people and all this stuff, like, actually do something that is despicable. Make people hate you. Instead of making people laugh at you and go, yeah, well, you're going to get put on your back by the end of the night, so I have no interest in actually booing you. That's exactly what this character needs. Maybe he just eventually just sheds the king gimmick, comes out as himself in like the wife beater and jeans or whatever the hell he wears, and just shed the whole thing, start fresh, and just be nasty and vile and take people out. Maybe even give somebody a little bit of color. I don't see a problem with that. So, yes. The one last thing, too. He's talking about bowing down to the king. I mean, have we heard this before? I think Charlotte would have something to say to this. He stole that right from Charlotte, and probably not verbatim but at the same time, Charlotte's saying the same exact thing. So are these two going to be a team? Like, I don't know. It just, it's like we've heard this. Bow down to the queen. Bow down to the king. Okay, like, I don't know. There's something missing from a depth perspective from him, and it could be that deep, dark, nasty side that we haven't seen.
It's texture. To me, it's just texture. The depth was there when he was the guy that didn't talk, went to the ring, destroyed people, wasn't even part of matches, and you walked out and you're saying, what's going to happen with this guy? Where are we going? And then that texture was killed. And that depth was killed the second he was Kurt Angle's lackey. That's me. So, anyway.
Well, thank you, DJ Kuzmo. Thank you. I know. I wish I could be interacting with everybody on Twitter. I really do. All right. So, we got the questions out of the way. I got to ask you, WWE has now changed their name of the pay-per-view twice from Extreme Rules to the Horror Show Extreme Rules. Now it's the Horror Show at Extreme Rules. What are they getting at? Is this Horror Show just basically centered around the swamp fight? It's not a match. A swamp fight between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt? Like, why put the Horror Show at Extreme Rules? We're not around Halloween. I don't understand the reference. Do you have any idea what this naming change is for?
I think it's to dissociate with everything that's going on today, and like, all these people at the Performance Center had COVID, and so we can't have Extreme Rules because there might be blood. If blood's involved, that's bloodborne disease. Da 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 da. So if that makes sense to you, which I think it does to everybody who's listening right now, it's just the fact that you want to make it more cinematic, which is the word we both dread. And I think that that's what they're going towards, is more than more than 2 cinematic matches. I think they're going to do like 3. And that is going to make me sick. It's going to make me just hate the fact that I love wrestling. But I really think that it's going into that entertainment part. And I think that's what it is. They want to throw goofy adjectives and adverbs and anything that they can into something to take the eyes off that we have a pandemic and the fact that they were really sloppy on taking care of their people and that they spread a disease within their own confines.
Could be. Yeah, it could be. Or I think it's, if I was to guess, probably geared towards the cinematic portion of their thinking about how to present this pay-per-view. And we all know they run from their identity any chance they get. And there's no better time and place to do it than when there are no fans in the arena and they can basically just make movies every month. And that's exactly what they're going to do at Extreme Rules, because they've now renamed it to the horror show at Extreme Rules. And we all know how I feel, how you feel about the cinematic portions of the presentation every single month. And I've kind of just surrendered to it in a way that's like, well, I love wrestling. I'm going to watch it because I love wrestling. Doesn't mean I'm going to like this more, but I'm going to watch it to see how it's presented. Are they trying to do comedy? Like, what are they trying to do? I don't think they could honestly set the bar any lower than they did with the Money in the Bank ladder matches. That's about as bad as it gets. Like, I mean, you take my worst nightmare of, like, showing a friend of why I watch wrestling and having them sit in front of that match. Like, I mean, it's like a nightmare. It makes me cringe because of how just, I mean, everybody knows. I don't want to get into it. But anyway, so let's jump into the actual context of the show in terms of what happened this week. Let's get into it. I mean, I'll throw a point out here. Matt Riddle. And Matt Riddle has been accused of sexual assault, or I forget the actual name of the charge, but he's been charged basically with being a bad guy. And he had sexual assault charges filed against him by an independent wrestler. And I discussed this at length at a couple of shows ago, and WWE doesn't seem to be concerned about this. They seem to be just kind of moving forward. They seem to be moving ahead as if this is not going to be actually, he's not going to actually be arrested or basically put in jail for this, that he's going to be fine. They feel that very confident, given the fact that he beat AJ Styles the day after this news broke. And now this week, he is back at the very beginning of the show with Michael Cole. So I guess I'll just touch on, what do you make of the sexual assault allegations, and how did you like that first promo with Michael Cole to open the show?
Michael Cole's Michael Cole. You know, it is what it is. But it wasn't bad, but nothing really popped to me. Now, with all that being said, as far as Matt Riddle's allegations, if he had really true allegations, he would be either in jail, and I know Vince McMahon can afford to get anybody out of jail, but I know a lot of police officers, which that might turn off listeners, but you know, they're good people. You know, they're who you're going to call when things go bad. But the fact that he and his girlfriend and I don't know, like, so many people can vouch for the fact that whoever was coming at him is a stalker leads a lot more believability in his situation than the fact that, like, Joey Ryan and all these people who are deleting Twitter and going on and going on and going on. So I'm not going to say that I believe him. I don't know. I wasn't there. But the fact is, when his girlfriend is saying, you're stalking, you know, you're stalking this guy, and she's part of this, like, anti-defamation, I guess that would be the best way to put it, right?
Yeah, defamation of character, yeah.
Yeah. So it's anti-defamation of character, and I believe that, I think that his case might be, and not because I'm a fan of his, but I think that his case might be special. Like some of the other people, and I have nothing against Joey Ryan, but if he did it, he did it. It's just really weird that he's in that character and everything else that kind of says, you'd believe it. But the fact is, I think there's a lot more evidence behind the fact that he's not doing this. He didn't get fired. He didn't get furloughed. He didn't get screwed, and he got promoted up to SmackDown. So either McMahon really loves him and wants to push him and will pay for him like Snuka. Yeah, I went there. Or, and that's the way I could just let. Yeah, my starting's bad today. That's why I could just leave it. I really don't think he did anything. I think that I'm not going to say he was a victim, but I think that when you have the support of your girlfriend and somebody putting it out there saying, I've seen all this information, and yes, it's BS, and it's that it kind of builds up and shows you, yes, this isn't right.
I agree. Again, I've spoken a little bit at length of this. I believe I was on with Mary Grader a few weeks ago, and when this whole thing broke, and they put AJ Styles on the day after, and I said, given the fact that that was a pre-recorded segment, they could have easily just cut him out and put something else in its place for the first segment of SmackDown when that happened, and they didn't, and they decided to go ahead with it. And I think that when any of these allegations that come out, WWE clearly needs to do their due diligence and speak with that performer and say, hey, you need to tell me the truth now, because if it comes out that you are actually guilty of this and we go ahead with putting you on SmackDown and it comes out that you were lying to us, you're fired. So Matt Riddle is either lying and really sweating bullets that nothing else comes out, or he truly didn't do anything, and that Candy Cartwright is clearly just a nut job. I mean, it's possible. And I think that if that's the case and Matt Riddle didn't do anything and WWE has just moved forward, I think that's the right message to send, to just move forward unless there's substantial evidence otherwise, because if you don't, then you're just sending the message and setting the precedent that anybody can accuse anybody of anything, especially when it comes to females accusing males of sexual abuse in this speaking out movement. And it sets the precedent for really anybody to say something and automatically pull that person off the air. It creates an enormous amount of power for that person just by saying something, even if it's totally untrue. So I think WWE going ahead with this tells you two things. One, they don't believe Matt Riddle did it, and if it comes out that he lied, he's probably gone. And two, that it also kind of goes in the face of Candy Cartwright and anybody else who thinks that they're going to be able to just put something on Twitter and say, Randy Orton sexually assaulted me back in 2017, and then have Randy Orton get pulled and so get pulled. It creates a toxic environment for people who like to cause destruction and who realize that they have the power to do that just by a simple accusation with no evidence. So again, if Matt Riddle did this, of course, wrong, bad guy, bad job, fire him. Especially if he lied and now he's caught, whatever, of course. Do I think he's did it? No, I'm going to go with the typical justice premise that not guilty until proven innocent. That's Stone Cold's court. Innocent until proven guilty. That is how I'm going to go with this, and I think WWE feels comfortable with it. Now, getting into the wrestling this week, I think that this was a weird promo from Matt Riddle. His explanation to Michael Cole as to why he doesn't wear shoes was bizarre. He said bro way too many times. He kind of comes off, and if nobody's ever seen him before, he kind of gets that vibe of like a obnoxious frat bro that is like that he's like the jock in the group that is just a total a-hole. At least that's the vibe I get, that he's just kind of the jock kid that's like in the too cool for school crowd with the fraternity. And he's built as a babyface now, but boy, he could be a heel quickly. And his explanation of not wearing shoes was really weird, about frostbite and how the doctors were going to amputate, and then how he still doesn't have feeling. If he didn't have feeling in his feet, okay, first of all, you can get damage from frostbite and you can have permanent damage in your nerves, but number one, there would be discoloration, right? Like when you get frostbite and if you got that severe frostbite, your feet would not look completely normal. And number two, you wouldn't be able to compete at the level that Matt Riddle competed because, if you can't feel your feet, that means your brain doesn't know all the time where your feet are placed and your balance could be off. You would not have been able to get to the level you're at. It was weird. I don't know. How did you feel about that?
It was garbage, complete trash. But my thing is, this whole thing reeks of Bruce Pritchard trying to kiss Vince McMahon's backside, and we get it. Like he's trying to explain things, and why doesn't he wear shoes, pal? Well, here's a really dumb answer, and we don't want that. We're not. It's not 1985 anymore. And I get the fact that at least they put some depth into the answer. It was okay. Well, he doesn't wear shoes because of this. Remember, they forced Rusev to wear shoes. Okay, they made him wear shoes because he rolled an ankle or broke an ankle, and they had some big storyline coming up for him. Well, it didn't really pay off. But brass tacks and baseball bats, when they come down to it, I think they're just trying to cover for something. It's like, well, you own all this world-class championship wrestling Dallas footage, and was it Kevin Von Erich? He never wore shoes, I think. He never wore shoes. And it was the whole thing that the announcer would say he never wore shoes because if he hit you with his big knuckle on his toe, he could cut you open. I buy that. I'm not going to buy that you're afraid of frostbite after all these years, especially when you've been a UFC fighter and you're as tough as you are. And I've watched his fights. He is good. He wasn't great, but he is good. So, and you're in Florida. You're not exactly in like northern Minnesota.
Yeah, I thought about that too. And I was looking at where this guy was born. He was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania has certainly some rough winters. There's no doubt about it. But the plausibility of this is it's not plausible. I would hope that he would present, if he presented that, it would have been kind of like a joke. But instead it was like a true story. It presented to be a true story. It's such a cartoon answer. There's just anybody who has half a brain cell about human physiology and anybody's had frostbite. I live in New York State. I get close to frostbite or frostbitten every single year. I have never been to the level of it's starting to hurt, but screw the pain. I'm going to stay out here. And he was talking about going outside and jumping back in the pool and going outside and coming back in the pool. It made no sense at all. It actually kind of made him look foolish. If you actually did something like this, that doesn't show that exactly you're the sharpest knife in the shed, right? So it's
Absolutely.
I don't know.
They're just trying to cover from the fact that it's always been his stoner gimmick. That's what the whole bro thing is, and I wear my slippers and my long hair because he's trying to be Lance from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went there, but I know I shouldn't have, but I did.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, the thing is, beyond that, though, this guy's great in the ring. I will give him that. Matt Riddle, his match on SmackDown, I don't know about you, but I really did like his in-ring work. And I've always liked his in-ring work. Do I think he's the next AJ Styles? No. But he's physical. He's got the look. He's got a good style. I like physically what Matt Riddle does. I did not like his promo. And having him face against Morrison also, I mean, it was like Battle of the Abs. I mean, who has nicer abs? It was like, seriously, whoever wins this match is crowned as having the nicest abs. Like, it was just, their show of, body fat combined was probably under 5. But their match together, Riddle and Morrison, that's something I'd like to see again. So as awful as the explanation was of his frostbitten feet as to why he doesn't wear shoes, which actually would make you want to wear shoes more, because wouldn't you want to wear shoes after, not wearing something that you should have wore in the damn snow, and then saying that, oh, well, I wear shoes, it makes me feel like my feet are on fire, bro. No, it doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. But the good part of this, as I try to transition into something good, was the Morrison-Riddle match. I really, really like this match, and something that I would like to see again, and hopefully I do. So there's some positive.
No, I agree because Morrison, first of all, he's dying a slow death, and I hate that. Why do you bring somebody this so incredibly talented as him back and just put him into mediocrity? One, with a tag team situation, it's garbage with a reality show star, and two, to be the single of the tag team that has to always lose. And I'd love to see these guys main event something and just give them a 20-minute match. A 20-minute match where Riddle does his MMA, Morrison does his high-flying parkour, or whatever they call it, and it could be really beautiful. You could write a story. As long as you have like a good agent to write the story for, it could be beautiful. But unfortunately, we got it as cannon fodder. And why? To promote Baron Corbin, which his match with Riddle is going to be way worse than what we just saw.
Oh, it's going to be, for sure. I mean, you went from a A+ quality match to probably a B minus match. I mean, you did. You took it down. But Corbin, I guess, on the pecking order of heels, is still above Morrison because Morrison's in a tag team. And if you're in a tag team to Vince McMahon, you're automatically in the second tier of what I consider important. So Baron Corbin is clearly going to battle with Matt Riddle. And with that whole program, the thing is, you can already see the outcome before it begins. And that's Matt Riddle going over. I don't see how, given everything we just talked about with Corbin, and if nothing changes, I don't think it will at this point, Matt Riddle is just going to be using Baron Corbin as another stepping stone into potentially facing AJ Styles for the Intercontinental Championship at some point. That's probably the destination, I would think. But yeah, I mean, Matt Riddle, look, he's good in the ring. It was not a good night on the mic, at least from my perspective. He seemed, I guess, comfortable. He makes you want to watch, so I'll give him that. When he's on the mic, he's different. He looks different. He speaks different. His bro thing is different. So he's got different going for him. It's just the context of what he was talking about. Whoever wrote that should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, seriously, they should really be ashamed of that promo. So I'm not really blaming Matt Riddle. He's just reciting what he was reading in the back. But whoever wrote that, I mean, you did a lot of damage for Matt Riddle, at least in my estimation.
Yeah, it just, we get the fact that he was kicked out of MMA because he won his fights when he was hot. He was on marijuana and, the devil's crown. And it's funny to me because usually this is going to surprise you. I've known some people who've smoked marijuana. I know.
What?
Yes. And you know what they did? Nothing. If this guy was that much better smoking weed, can you imagine if he was just like on steroids and didn't touch weed? It's funny to me. But they just want to keep going with this because they don't know how to build a character because they want a first and last name person for everybody now. There's no more Undertakers or Kanes or Mantar, which we don't need, but the fact is they can't build a gimmick. Your gimmick is what your life is, what your background is. And that's why Sami Zayn is suffering. That's why, I mean, you're a redheaded Canadian guy that is from Arab descent. And you have taxi cab driver shorts. No one knows who you are. It's only certain ones, like Kevin Owens. He grabs the bull by the balls and just does what he does because he's so great on the stick. But if you don't have those skills, like you end up like Cesaro. You're Swiss. That's your gimmick. That's stupid. The guy's inhumanly strong. Well, okay, he's the Swiss Superman. Well, he's what? What else besides that? The people won't connect with him. The people love him. But that's what we get. So that's why we're getting this Matt Riddle bro. I kick off my flip-flops and, and he seriously lands from Pulp Fiction.
He's kind of an implant. I see what you're saying. It's funny you mentioned about Cesaro, and this actually wasn't one of my talking points, but since you're already discussing, you mentioned Cesaro quickly. his gimmick is that he's Swiss. And if you remember, a number of years ago when Vince was on Stone Cold's podcast on the WWE Network, I believe it was his first appearance or his first actual live podcast he did on the network, Stone Cold said to Vince, hey, what is it with Cesaro? Is there something missing? Like, what is it, right? And Vince goes, I don't know. It could be that he's Swiss. I don't know. Well, that is so telling into Vince's mind. If you're telling me that it's because that Cesaro is Swiss, that is the element that's holding him back from having a hell of a career and going to that next level, you clearly don't get it, Vince. Like, that should have nothing to do with how he elevates or descends on the roster. You can't tell me that his nationality is the reason of him ascending or not. I mean, that was just so telling. And this past week, Nakamura got a victory over Kofi, and I guess I'll just jump into that since Nakamura is with Cesaro, which, by the way, loved the match and very surprised that Nakamura got the clean victory given where Kofi Kingston was just a year ago and Nakamura was a year ago. Nakamura was in obscurity until he got aligned with Cesaro and Sami Zayn, which, my God, I miss Sami Zayn so much, and I can't wait until he comes back. But it was striking to see Nakamura win. I'm all for it, and I guess it's twofold here before I get too deep into the weeds. One, were you surprised by Nakamura's win over Kofi? And two, what do you think about Cesaro since we're already on that train? Is there any hope for him to kind of rise above what he's been defined as just kind of in a loose tag team with Shinsuke and being the cheerleader for him?
Okay, first of all, we have 2 world-class athletes. 3. Kofi is a world-class athlete. And Big E could be. But he has been turned into the biggest joke in the wrestling industry. And that makes me disgusted. Because he was supposed to get the Roman Reigns push. Everybody knows that. It was supposed to be Reigns or Big E. Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Well, it turns out it was Reigns. I'm disgusted by the fact that Cesaro doesn't get anything but standing by the ring. Or hanky-panky, and then we have to send you to the back. Cesaro is amazing. Nakamura, a legend, a Japanese legend. And like people always ask me, like, why did Muta not wrestle in WWE? Because he didn't want to be called the Great Paul and spit purple sputum instead of green and have goofy face paint instead of his face paint and job to, I don't know, the Brooklyn Brawler. That's why. And I see Nakamura, like, I feel bad because I feel like he sold his soul. And it's disgusting, but he's working his way back up the rankings. I was actually pretty surprised he won because I figured they were just going to bury him more. He's foreign. That's his gimmick. We don't know what to do. Same thing with Cesaro, and it's stupid. They have personality. Cesaro is the James Bond playboy. So let him come out as a playboy. Let him be a playboy. Don't have him come out in his, I don't know, his trunks all the time. And the guy's insanely strong. Go with it. He could be a world champ. Sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked.
Well, you mentioned that Cesaro could be a world champ, and I'm getting like images of really Daniel Bryan. And when I say that, it's because Cesaro's a guy that I will guarantee you, eventually when we get back to a live audience, and hopefully sooner than later, and boy do I miss a true live audience. I mean, so much. But when you see Cesaro, he's a guy that has been, in the eyes of many fans, misused, misbooked, and mismanaged along his entire career. The start-stop, maybe, he main evented Raw a couple of times. I remember when he main evented against John Cena and on Raw and killed it. He's had so many good matches over the years. He's the plug-and-play guy, and he's Swiss, and he's a Swiss Superman. He's a Swiss Cyborg. He's the Swiss whatever. He has the swing, and he's James Bond, and they really haven't truly ever found a real character he can sink his teeth into that you could see him making a ton of money with. And yeah, the James Bond Playboy deal was just kind of one in many lines of his gimmicks, and now he's just the wrestling purist, I guess, based on his shirt. Cool shirt, by the way. I mean, it's very plain, like it. I think it suits him well. He is truly a wrestling purist. That's exactly what he is. But I think Cesaro's a guy that you could have him like win a tournament and have him chase the championship, and people would get behind him so hard. And that's why I'm getting images of Daniel Bryan, because this is a guy that has earned the respect of fans for many years. Fans know he's been misbooked, mismanaged for many years. And this could be like an organic grassroots movement for Cesaro, just like there was for Daniel Bryan. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. I mean, a situation would have to present itself beyond the typical Cesaro segments week after week after week. But when we get back in front of a live crowd, I could see the fans, if something is ever presented to Cesaro in a real way where he's in a tournament to win the championship, or he could enter the Elimination Chamber and pull a Kofi Kingston deal against Daniel Bryan a couple of years ago. Like, there's something there that if the fans got an opportunity, Cesaro could explode overnight. And that's how I see it, because the fans would go, oh my God, Cesaro, he can have an opportunity here. Like, they respect the hell out of him, but he hasn't ever found that gimmick. And I think the gimmick could just be the Daniel Bryan route of getting the fans behind you because they know and respect you and have seen you get mismanaged for so long.
I agree, but the fact is, he's been around as long as Daniel, and you see it. You see how much the people love him, especially when he does the swing. And someone huge like Big Show or the Great Khali, and they just keep missing the boat. And that's like, that's that. When they get the fans back, I hope they get behind him, because this man deserves way more, and he's so much more talented. But I'm not taking anything against or away, from Nakamura or Kofi or Big E. Big E could be a destroyer, and instead he's a parody of how strong and incredibly talented he is, and it just makes me sick. I would love to see the New Day, while we're talking about this match, the New Day take a different direction. I'd like them to go backstage with their stupid pancakes and fruity pebbles and everything else, and just get smacked around by Ron Simmons. And then him whisper into their ear and start a new version of the Nation of Domination, except not exactly as racial as it used to be. But him to basically slap some sense into him, especially Big E, because Big E, Kofi's talented, don't get me wrong. Xavier, very talented, very, very athletic, but there is something on Big E that could be something, and he's made a career out of acting like a fool. It's time for him to act like a man.
I've been advocating for the New Day to break up for many years, which I've understood why they've kept them together over the years. And even though that many have felt that this group has run its course long ago, the fact is that you don't run into money-generating machines like this very often. You don't run into tag teams or groups this often that generate the kind of money that they do for WWE. Now, do I know the specifics? No. We'll never know the specifics of what exactly or how much they're bringing in from the cereal that they sold, or from the T-shirts, or the unicorn horns, or any other of the merchandise that they've sold. We'll never know. But I think it's safe to say that it's a significant amount of money that WWE has generated from the New Day, and continue to generate from the New Day, albeit probably on a declining curve at this point. So with that said, I understand the resistance or the hesitation to break this group up because of the money-generating potential that they have. And they're a business. WWE is a for-profit organization. So I totally get why they have hesitated, because of the amount of money that they're probably generating and continue to generate. That said, eventually this is going to burn out. And I'm surprised it's lasted this long, as long as it has. But to me, you're right. The true money is in main events. Always. Always, always. And Big E has, I think, been really overlooked many times. And I'm sure he'd tell you that too, off the record, that he feels that he has been overlooked. And yes, Kofi got his opportunity because of the fans. Xavier Woods, not exactly at that level. So I don't think Xavier Woods is ever going to really be in that arena of a main event. But you have Big E, who looks the part, but he's made a lot of money, looking like a fool every week, and he laughs all the way to the bank. He looks like a complete fool, making inside jokes and throwing pancakes and wearing unicorn horns and making puns on the air that only insiders know. All these things that are just like obnoxious and to me not funny and are not even close to our demographic, which is probably why we're so repulsed by the New Day. It's not supposed to be for our demographic. But with Big E, there's a lot of potential there, and it's a matter of when do they pull the trigger? Because when they pull that trigger, do they keep him in the New Day character, or do they go full Big E and have him just kind of migrate away from Big E as a unicorn horn wearing, pun injecting type of character and go full Big E? Because when they do that, that's a big decision from a money perspective, because there go all of the New Day revenue if they do indeed disband the group for that gamble on Big E being that big main event star. So I see the hesitation by WWE.
No, I get it. I just it's been a seed that was watered 5 years ago, 7 years ago, and maybe 10 years ago, and they're just not seeing the potential, and it's sad. And I really wish, he's a monster. I think they could do so much more. His look needs to be changed somewhat. Not just a haircut and say you have a new look, but something better. Get him away from the stupid pancake stuff, and you might have a big Van Vader or a Bam Bam Bigelow, like this big guy that can do some amazing stuff. But we don't let him do it because sometimes he's just outside the ring clapping. So
yeah,
that's all I can say about that.
I'm with you. And when I look at it, because I had to actually Google this while you were talking, they debuted on July 21st, 2014. So it's almost been exactly 6 years since this group has debuted. And they were not, when you look at the debut, it was not nearly what it is today. I mean, they have gone from this white collar shirt wearing group of, we're supposed to be like, I guess, a Southern Baptist version church goer chorus. I mean, to this just absolutely insane, just unicorn horn wearing group. And to their credit, they have done a whole lot with a lot little that most people didn't think that they would get to this level based on the plan and projection for this group. You got to hand it to all three men for really owning this whole thing. It's just well beyond, I think, its expiration date. But I don't think WWE cares because of they're making money. No, the thing is, I don't care when they're WWE Tag Team Champions. I don't care anymore. Like, whether they will win the belts or lose the belts, I feel nothing emotionally for this group. I mean, it's just, they're there, okay, they're visually appealing, I guess. They're wacky. They look like walking cartoons, but I don't have any interest in them winning championships, and that's how you know it's time to move on. Like, I have no interest in them winning the tag team belts. Nobody cares when they win them or lose them anymore. It's just nothing more than a title count that they can have Big E change the number during the introduction of saying you're 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times. I don't care. I mean, I don't care anymore. So, okay, let's move down the line here. I guess on the SmackDown end of things, as we're on SmackDown, Jeff Hardy and Sheamus, they ended SmackDown, and Sheamus was there via Skype or Zoom or whatever other video conferencing software and toasted Jeff Hardy, which was, of course, a backhanded toast to really try to get Jeff Hardy to start drinking again. And boy, are they really touching on some sensitive subjects. I think you and I touched on this too a number of weeks ago, that they're on some dangerous ground. I think we mentioned that Jeff Hardy, we were hoping, gave consent to this, or was maybe even the originator of this idea. And if it was, then I think that's even better. But the fact of the matter is, not even for Jeff Hardy, but for people literally struggling with this on a daily basis, alcoholism is one of the biggest diseases that are running around in the world. I mean, it's devastating. It can absolutely be a family crushing type of disease, and boy, they are treading in dangerous water doing this. They've done it before with, I think, Chris Jericho and CM Punk at one point. They've treaded in this before. It's just a dangerous thing to do, and I'm not sure how to feel about it. How are you feeling about Jeff Hardy and Sheamus as this rivalry continues?
I absolutely hate it. I think it treads on too many things that I know personal in life. I work in restaurants and bars, and I've seen how bad alcoholism can hurt people, and I see how bad it can destroy people. So it's not fair for somebody who has a problem to have it rubbed in their face. Why doesn't Jeff Hardy just show a bunch of his matches and how bad he is, and then just project on the Titantron or whatever they have done that, yeah, you're a really bad worker, but you used to work out next to Triple H, so he gave you a push, and you've been nothing but a transitional champion. How does that hurt? That hurts really bad. I guess maybe it hits a little close to home. Okay?
It does, and I know I'm with you. It's a very dangerous topic to talk about. It's not quite as bad as if they were talking about like suicide or something. And if you remember, and not to get off topic, just a quick note, the Tim White and Josh Matthews segments back in the day when Tim White was literally trying to kill himself on the air. I mean, not in real life, not for real, but he was fake trying to kill himself week after week. I don't know if you remember that. And it was like this ongoing segment. Like, imagine them doing something like that. It's not that egregious, but you're still treading on things that literally people struggle with. And Jeff Hardy did address that. He said, that you're making fun of things that people struggle with, on a daily basis. And so I guess they're trying to, even if someone's offended by it, using Jeff Hardy as kind of a conduit of like, well, Jeff Hardy's right. I struggle with this, but Jeff Hardy's not giving in, and I'm not going to give in, and I'm going to persevere just like Jeff Hardy. And I guess that's the logic, is that Jeff Hardy didn't give in. He ended up, beating up the bartender, as we all kind of expected. And but again, when you look at the alcohol numbers, I'm Googling as we talk, but I had to know, like, what are the alcohol related deaths in just the United States from alcohol? And it's 88,000 people a year die in the United States from alcohol-related incidents. So, I mean, it's not good. There's 14.4 million people ages 18 and older that have alcohol use disorder in the United States. Like, so this is a big thing for them to even touch on. Again, I'm not offended by it. Luckily, I have not had to deal with something like this. Of course, I did my partying in my college years, but it never was something that stuck with me and was a problem for me on a daily basis. Not that I didn't do stupid things when I drank, but it never became like a habit or a disease or something I relied on a daily basis to get through things. And so luckily in my life, I haven't had to deal with that, and I haven't known too many people that have had that serious of a problem. I think the exception to the rule. I think most people at least know somebody on a first name basis, or a close friend or a friend of a friend that has serious problems. So again, it's just dangerous, especially for a company that is so concerned about image and public image and bullying awareness, all these things, and they're touching on something that, man, I mean, what if somebody is watching that? And I'm an alcohol abuser. I have a massive problem with alcohol, and I'm turning on wrestling because, it should be something that's an escape from my reality. And they're now talking about alcoholism with Jeff Hardy, and I see them displaying all this liquor, and then I get in my mind like, boy, that liquor's kind of looks good, right? They got all these different things, and yeah, they turn the labels around, but I'm like, that stuff looks kind of good, and what if there's those side effects? I don't know. I'm kind of probably digging deep into this, but they are touching on something that is very dangerous.
Oh no, it's a bad place to go. I think that there's way more sensitivity, so to speak, towards alcohol. But why don't they throw a couple syringes by Sheamus and say, "How's it going with the steroids?" Well, I mean, let's be honest. How about a couple of pills by somebody else? We could do this all day. But the fact is, I just feel like they may be going somewhere with this storyline, but the fact is, it's a punishment for him. First of all, he should have never lost to Sheamus because Sheamus is terrible in the ring. But the fact that it is just so humanly embarrassing. And in this time when we need people, you push a storyline where you just get on somebody and you destroy their downfall. And what is wrong with them? That makes me sick.
Yeah, it's not cool. Like I'm not digging this storyline. I mean, I hope they just kind of after this program is done, or after this portion of the Sheamus Jeff Hardy segment is done, that they just kind of move on. I mean, yeah, we all know Jeff Hardy's struggles. I know what they're trying to do, bring real life into the stories, and we all understand that. But sometimes it's not for the sake of trying to make something more real, which, again, on a weekly basis, I want to feel something real. Like, we all want to feel that. That's what makes wrestling great, is when you believe. But
yeah.
This, to me, there's believing in things that are not possibly destructive or offensive to people, especially in today's day and age with so much alcohol abuse. And to be totally honest, I think with the whole lockdown thing in the last 4 months, people probably are using more drugs. If you're apt to do that, you probably had more time to do that, and maybe in a depressed even further. So this is terrible timing to even do this. It's bad timing anyway, but to do this at a time where alcohol abuse and drug abuse is probably at an all-time high because of the last 4 months of lockdowns and people possibly losing their jobs and being depressed and being stuck in their homes. It's bad. So they should just get away from this. So, okay. I think you have said enough on this thing. It's just bad news bears. So, all right. Moving on to something that I enjoyed was AJ Styles and Drew Gulak for the Intercontinental title. Again, Gulak is just super, super sound in the ring. I could watch AJ and Gulak go at it for an hour. I mean, Gulak is, again, a master. So is AJ Styles, of course, without that even being said. It was interesting to have Daniel Bryan popping in on a Zoom call, which we all know was probably just pre-taped, and they were just say, hey, you got to ask this question, and they plug in Daniel Bryan's video. Whatever, that's fine. But I've never seen that before, where there's video interviews happening or commentary happening in the middle of the match. I was fine with it because it was pertaining to the match, so I like that. And having the only thing I didn't like, well, the outcome was predictable. I never really thought Gulak was going to win. AJ won very decisively. There was no hook or crook. It was a true victory by AJ, hard-fought victory. Was that we never heard from Gulak, at least unless I missed it. Like, I didn't hear anything from Drew Gulak, because if you're in a match for the Intercontinental title, wouldn't you want to know what this means to that person? Wouldn't you want to know, like, why they want to win, what their aspirations are, what it's going to mean if they win it? And we didn't hear anything from Drew. He was just kind of like the guy that's just kind of silently walking to the ring, and Daniel Bryan, I guess, by default, did some talking for him during the match. I don't know, but it was a very sound match, and I wouldn't mind if these two locked up again in the future.
I'd love to see it too. Honestly, I think Drew Gulak is very underrated. Same as Tony Nese. A lot of people didn't realize Tony Nese is incredibly talented, and he and Gulak came up together, and they had so much chemistry, so much great chemistry. And I think that's why they were signed at the same time, which coincides with the Cruiserweight Classic. But to watch this match, great. The holding him on the ropes at the end for the forearm, it concerned me a little bit, but, I mean, let's get down to it. Like, these guys can go, and this is what we want to see. We don't want to see cinematic, but, man, give me 20 minutes. Give me 20 minutes of these two, and it sucks because we both understand the fact that we always know who's going to win. It's so predictable. Now, with that being said, I rather... this is the one time I want something hokey to be in there, just to make it like Gulak had that extra little push, that extra little, he might do it. But, oh God, these guys are technicians, and you've got a 20-year vet and a 15-year vet just doing their stuff. And I promise you, if it wasn't produced, these guys could have done a lot more. I just want to watch them wrestle all day.
Oh, I could have. These two, you talk about wrestling purists, like with Cesaro, I mean, like these two, from a fundamental perspective, they are absolute, I mean, ring generals. I mean, AJ obviously is the much more pronounced star in the ring, but that doesn't mean Drew Gulak is any less talented. And anytime Drew Gulak is in the ring, especially when he faced against Daniel Bryan and teamed with Daniel Bryan, there was so much there. And I hope that Drew Gulak doesn't just go into obscurity after this. Yes, he lost clean and fairly to a heel, and he lost to a top tier heel. There's no shame in that. But that doesn't mean you need to go bury Drew Gulak. And I honestly don't think they will, because he's associated with Daniel Bryan. He's like the extension or arm of Daniel Bryan. And by that effect, I think Daniel Bryan honestly saved his career from a true perspective, because Drew Gulak, if you remember, was fired and then brought back.
Yes.
So I think a lot of that had to do with Daniel Bryan's influence on his on-camera persona that people otherwise would have been like, eh. I mean, if you didn't follow Drew Gulak until he got to the main roster, you'd be like, who cares? This guy's giving PowerPoint presentations. We could do without him. But then he gets in the ring. Then he gets associated with Daniel Bryan, and his career literally was saved by that storyline, I believe, of being associated with Daniel Bryan and it working, and WWE not planning on it working like that. So I'm sure that Gulak is forever in debt to Daniel Bryan on a real level. Okay. Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I could see that, but Drew Gulak, like when I watched him on the Indies and stuff like that, I mean, he and Tony Nese used to light it up. They were like adversaries, like ACH and Cedric Alexander. That's why Vince went on that hiring spree to get not only a wrestler but their foil, so they could make their own false, version of it. But I love the fact that Daniel Bryan has reinvented reinvented Drew Gulak's career, but I also love the fact that he is putting on great matches in a situation where no one wants to be present, in a weird place. I mean, there's so many people who are under contract, and Drew Gulak is taking, charge with this, and he's doing a great job. And yeah, I could watch these guys wrestle all day. I really want to watch them wrestle more, and I hope that this actually continues more. And I want to see Drew get out of Daniel's shadow and just kind of become like his own man. He's going to need a little bit of a niche or what am I looking for? Like just his own character a little bit. You just can't be a great wrestler because, like we talked about Cesaro, it just doesn't work. So I want not an attitude, but a character, just something.
A personality. I mean, I'm sure he has one. He just needs to show it, and that's where really the connection and money is truly made. I mean, he can be great in the ring, just like Cesaro's great in the ring, but the fact is, if you don't have a gimmick or a personality that you can turn up to 10, it's never going to work on a high level for a long time. I mean, that's why you're seeing guys go up and down in kind of a plug and play type of scenario where, like with Dolph Ziggler, and we'll get to that too, but he's never going to really, really make it to the top. He's kind of defined in his position. He's really kind of under lock and key in a certain position in WWE. He just is at this point. So, but kind of closing out SmackDown, and I know that there's probably some little things on SmackDown I didn't cover, but so my apologies, and maybe you can bring them up. And Sasha, who are just, to me, they seem to be on the run of their careers, at least as a team. They have found their footing, and it took a while. And we've noted on this podcast and on many other shows that have happened that Bayley at first was kind of finding her footing. It was kind of weird to watch. She just went from happy-go-lucky side ponytail, waving, wacky, waveable, inflatable tube men type of entrances to this dark character, and it was very stark. And she didn't know who and what the dark character of Bayley was, and she's morphed into this obnoxious, almost unbeatable, lucky at times character that is just feels comfortable. And Sasha, to her credit, has, I think, held up her end of the bargain as well. She's got tag team gold, but it's weird to me. The dynamic has changed from Bayley being in the shadow of Sasha to Sasha being in the shadow of Bayley. it's crazy, but that's how I feel, and how much and how great Bayley has been as a heel. And now she seems to be having Nikki Cross, who's up next to face her for the Women's Championship. I don't think Nikki Cross will beat her. Spoiler alert. But how are you liking Sasha and Bayley as their as the tag team champions? Maybe you're not as high on them as I am, or maybe you are. But curious, where are you on them?
Okay, first of all, I love Sasha and Bayley because they can both work. And they put on classic matches against each other. So I know in the ring, if they're going to take on, say, the Iconics or any hodgepodge, Bliss and Cross, what they can do whatever they want to do in that ring. They can call it, and it's going to be beautiful. I love Bayley has so become the antithesis of what she was in NXT, which is beautiful. They always say if you're really good at something, you're better at the other thing. And her look is different. The t-shirt kind of, I don't know, leggings kind of thing. It's not the Bayley that hugged and had her little animatronics and stuff like that. Like, this is a great character. She's going to go far. Now, as far as Sasha goes, I love Sasha. I think everybody says Charlotte's the best, or Asuka. I really think Sasha is. She's worked with all of them. And honestly, there is no bad way that any of those girls can go right now with who you have. Because Nikki Cross is talented. People do not give her credit because she's not as pretty as the rest. Well, you know what? Watch her indie stuff. She's as talented as the rest, and she brings character and depth and texture. And then you have, Alexa Bliss. I have a soft spot for her because I think she really learned the business on the fly. And she got pushed really hard and got put into really awesome main event situations really fast when she wasn't ready, and she just kept going and going. And if people want to say she's bad, well, then just, look a couple years back to the Divas, and I think you'll see like a night and day difference. So I'm loving where this is going. What I really want to see, I don't really want to see Bayley and Sasha go at it yet. I want to see it stretch out a little bit and then both win championship gold and they go against each other as a women's champion head to head. Because I think with them laying off so many people, they're going to start shrinking the amount of championships they have and start combining the titles like they did back in the 2000s.
Yeah, they could be. I mean, I'm fine with that. To me, I like fewer championships because they mean more when you have fewer. And it's just simple economics, supply and demand. You have more of something, it's worth less. Same thing goes with pro wrestling. They're not exempt of that philosophy. And it's interesting that you mentioned about Bayley and Sasha going at one another, because I think for so long, many of us thought it's coming, it's going to happen, and you see cracks, and you see Bayley speaking for Sasha, and Sasha getting annoyed and not answering the interview questions, and then Sasha this week made a match for Bayley, so there's tit for tat, and they're teasing it, but at the same time, I've actually reached a point where I'm not ready for them to break up. I mean, I'm actually kind of on the side of let's wait as long as possible, and I was actually I was on the other side of the fence for months. And now I've seen what they've done, their body of work over the last several months, and I'm like, they're damn good together. They're great TV. And WWE, I think, feels the same way, given the fact that they're on every single show. They're on commentary.
Yes.
Even if they're not in a match, they're on commentary. They have just been a great. I look forward to them now. They are a staple of the shows. I hope that this is a obnoxiously long run with these two before they finally decide to pull the trigger and make them enemies. I think if I'm WWE, and I hope that they have the same type of ideology, that they decide to wait until they're back in front of a full audience, or at least a half full audience, where if something like this happens, you want that instant crowd reaction. You want the sound of the fans cheering or booing or whatever it may be, depending on who turns on who. You want that. That's the part. That's the emotion. That's the soul of pro wrestling, and that's a big moment to not have in front of true fans and a lot of fans. I'm not talking about the 10 people surrounding ringside. Given that it certainly helps the presentation, that's not a true representation of the WWE fans of how they feel at times. So that I hope they wait until that happens, whenever it may be. Again, depending on how the coronavirus and how it spreads, and it's up and it's down and it's spiking here and there and everywhere. I don't know. I mean, we may not see it in 2020, and that's a sad thing. But maybe we will, maybe we won't. So that's how I would book this as long as possible with these two. Really,
oh, yeah.
I mean, I actually was kind of getting annoyed. I'm like, let's just get to it because we know it's coming. But then I see them together week after week, and I'm like, they're really good together. So obnoxious, particularly Bayley. So I'm on board for just string this out until it can't be strung out anymore.
Make it until it gets under our skin. And that's when it's going to be the most perfect boiling point. And then they could probably surprise us and make Bayley be the face instead of Sasha. There's so much writing they can do with this, because this is one of the few feuds, not even a feud, but storylines that they're doing so right now. There's so much goofy storylines. Like, do we care about the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders? No. But do we care about this? Yes, and that's why we're talking about it.
I lost you there. Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. And it's a sad thing with the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits that I don't even care about the Raw Tag Team Championships, because we've been told that competing in, high school track events is more important than what's actually around their waist, and they're getting paid six figures or more to be there. And that we were told that everyone who's in WWE, it's their dream to be there. We heard it from Matt Riddle this week. It's my dream. All I've wanted to do since I was a little boy or little girl is being WWE superstar. We hear the same nonsense all the time, the same corporately injected speech that everybody has to say, that this is the best place to be, and we got to be here. And yet, somebody who has a championship, which apparently everyone's supposed to be chasing, we have the champions and the belts, have camera crews follow them to apparently a local high school track and field event, and have them jump over hurdles, and they have them do bowling, and they have them do basketball, and all these things. It's
demeaning.
It's
demeaning.
Yeah, it is. And I, it's a shame because of how talented the Street Profits are, particularly in the ring. And what this could be, instead Vince sees them and sees a small amount of comedy and jumps all over it. That's what he does. When he sees an inch of comedy, he takes it 4 miles with comedy and then just beats it into the ground, and it's terribly presented. And the biggest victim of all are the Raw Tag Team titles for who are around the waist of the Street Profits. It's a damn shame, but hopefully they're transitioning out of that with these two now. I believe that these two are done feuding in what was a very friendly feud to begin with. So I don't know. I mean, I'm transitioning to Raw here, but
it was no, it's all good. It was like so watered down of what could be really good wrestling. And instead, you turned what could be the new version of the Road Warriors into the Berserker, and you took what could have been a great tag team and made them basically, and they're trying to make a new day out of the Street Profits, and I hate it because that seems racial. So what's your gimmick? Think about that.
Yep, I'm with you. I mean, I'm not going to bury this. I've killed it for many weeks because it's just an embarrassment. I don't value comedy, or even I don't even value good comedy over the importance of the championships that we're supposed to all care about, because the superstars, the wrestlers, are supposed to care about it. And when they don't care about it, and the actual company itself doesn't, because they're bringing camera crews to these so-called events that they're doing off-site, then how the hell as a viewer am I supposed to care about these championships? They're nothing more than props. They're toys. It's a joke. And on top of it, it's bad comedy. So it's an F all the way around with that. And that's a damn shame to see, given that Montez Ford especially is so damn talented It's insane, and I think eventually that things will turn around. I mean, it can't get much worse from a presentation standpoint. I hope they keep these things in the ring. If they want to be obnoxious backstage and have Montez Ford with the cup and talk about wanting smoke and all that, fine. It's not my cup of tea, but at least it's a wrestling personality that's backstage where he should be, at the arena, at the event, instead of, playing make-believe out at a local high school track team. I mean, so this to me, it's a absolute embarrassment for the Raw Tag Team Championships, which to me are the biggest victim of the belts. And as a wrestling fan, of course, you and I just despise this stuff. But okay, but something I didn't despise, something I really, really love right now on Monday Night Raw, is Seth Rollins. And Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio and Dominic and even Aleister Black and Humberto Carrillo injecting themselves as like kind of the equalizers, if you will, against Murphy and Austin Theory. This is turning out really, to me, exceeding expectations from when this whole thing started. You look at Rey Mysterio and you're like, this guy's on the back nine of his career. He's got a little bit left to give, but probably not a whole lot. And my God, has he proved us all wrong on his really second run here in WWE. It has been a delight to see him every week. This, especially with Seth Rollins, I did not expect these two to have this great of chemistry. The storyline has been generally presented well. Dominic is not playing make believe either. He seems to be all in. He seems to be taking this seriously. This whole thing is really, really good. Having Seth come out this week and talk about how he's going to beg for forgiveness. We were told he's going to beg for forgiveness. And it turned out, of course, to be he's going to beg forgiveness for not what he did to Rey Mysterio in the past, but for what he's going to do in the future. I mean, it's all been just really brilliantly done.
What I love, when the mask was put on Humberto, that like trying to put the mask on and everything, and just the beatdowns. Like Seth Rollins' character is so through the roof, like out of this world. I really want him to keep going in this Jim Jones direction and this slow, methodical, evil human being. What did they call him? Like he was a dastardly something. I can't remember, but it was amazing. And I love watching all these guys perform together. Aleister, Humberto, Seth Murphy, Buddy Murphy. I'm still going to call him Buddy Murphy. Great. But just the psychology, this is a good storyline. Like, this is the one good writer that they have right now. And I want to see Seth become more relaxed. Just sit back on your throne and get more of that character. He's doing a great job. He's killing it. He's nailing it. But the more evil he gets, and the more he has henchmen, and the more that he seems dastardly, so to speak, because he is a great wrestler. So people want to get behind him. So the more you have other people do stuff for you, the more you can make yourself despicable in front of people that, no audience. It's just amazing. And then you have the Rey dynamic and his son. And honestly, I'm surprised, and I don't know if you are, that Dominic hasn't really done any in-ring. At this point, I figured he was going to do something even more like an actual wrestling match. So I think that he has so many great ring technicians around him, and I think that they have the perfect writer. So you've got a great writer, and you've got a kid who's going to carry on a storyline for his father, who's probably going to retire soon. And I think it's all like, you've got the great leader of the writer, and you've got the great characters, and you've got the great teachers. And Dominic, I think, is going to be really awesome on this. I think that something's going to happen with him where he's going to be blowing our minds. He's going to be like the biggest luchador ever or something like that. But I'm loving it. I really want Seth to get more darker. Just a couple shades more darker. What do you think of that?
Well, he's certainly headed that way. from where he started, and I totally, yeah, like Seth right now is on the path of Bayley. Like Bayley and Seth seem to be paralleling their heel turns, where at first it was kind of weird. I mean, Seth as a heel to me is more natural anyway, but they both seem to be hitting their stride at the same time. And Seth right now, I agree. If he goes darker, that will make him even more dislikable, more evil, more dastardly, as you said. And that's what I want. And he's headed that way. I mean, at times he seems like he's kind of spaced out, like he's being possessed, or like spirits are like taking over his body, or he's just like he's hearing voices or something like that. Like, I love what he's doing and not taking responsibility for anything, and expecting people to just be okay with being sacrifices to the greater good. All of this, it's just so well done. And yeah, like you said, whoever's the writer on this needs to have more of an influence on the show as a whole. It's just,
yes,
it is just great. The execution from Seth and from all involved has been very good for the most part. And again, maybe it is more henchmen. I think that's a part of it. And maybe wherever the heck the AOP are, they weren't fired, were they? They were.
No.
Okay.
Injured again.
Yeah. So whenever the heck they come back from this just cycle of injuries, they should go right back with Seth. To me, the Buddy Murphy and Austin Theory have done a nice fill-in. They've been very suitable for what they've done. We haven't heard a ton from them. I'd like to hear more from them. But at least they're taking the hits for Rollins. They're sacrificing themselves for Rollins, almost mesmerized by the Monday Night Messiah. They are disciples, as they call themselves. I mean, there's so many religious undertones. They have to be careful, of course. Is one thing you don't talk about is like religion and politics. But they're not directly speaking about anything religious or religious figures. But they're taking elements of religious figures and dictators and things like that, and using the worst of them to implement in their character, especially Seth, and I'm loving it. Like, again, Dominic, yeah, we haven't seen a whole lot from him from an in-ring perspective other than, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago on Raw when he attacked Seth from behind and then escaped out of the arena. So outside of that, yeah, Dominic hasn't gotten really physically involved from that perspective. And like you said, maybe a match is coming down the line for him. I would think he's going into the family business. I don't know how well trained he is. So
I'm thinking this is like a Braun Strowman thing. Like whatever they're doing with him, they're going to keep it off camera. It's not going to be on NXT. It's going to be dark matches, or it's called brown matches, which is like you wrestle before there's even a setup. And I think that's what it is, because they really want his thing to be like the big, 4th of July fireworks festival kind of thing. But I just don't know how much longer they can really stretch it out, because it's a great story, but if we don't have concrete, what am I looking for, though? The way to say it, if we don't have a concrete result here and there, not 50-50, but like something, just a little something, then we're going to get bored of it. But I'm thinking like this is the right writer, and I think we're going to get like a little something like maybe Buddy Murphy gets pinned by Rey Mysterio, and something, it just builds and builds and builds. Rey Mysterio keeps interfering. We never saw this dynamic. This would be really interesting, and I think you might like this. When Kane made his debut after ripping the cage off on that Monday Night Raw, he came out and he decimated everybody on the show over and over again. What if Rey did that in search of Seth Rollins? The small man goes out and he helps all the baby faces win, or just screws their match, and he's just that angry.
Whew. Yeah, you could do that. I mean, you're bringing back Attitude Era moments for me, particularly that one with Kane, and when Austin found out who the higher power was, and he just like stunned everybody in sight and was on a warpath to find Vince McMahon. So obviously in a much lesser degree, Rey could do that. Certainly, I would think that though, if he was going to do that against the heels, given that he's a smaller man, he would have to kind of inherently attain some heel tactics with like a weapon or attacking from behind, or maybe they just given him an injection of superpower and he's able to take down, you know, guys left and right. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, given the fact that if it's a father that is just incensed and is just enraged and nothing's going to stop him and he's on, like, you know, just complete warpath, sure. I could see that. I think that the thing is with that is a very crowd reaction heavy segment that you're relying on when there's no crowd to speak of. I mean, yeah, again, you have people in the audience.
Great point.
But it relies on a loud reaction from the audience to really build that. And I'm sure WWE feels the same way. There's probably a lot that they wanted to do at WrestleMania, they wanted to do after, and they're just pocketing it and putting it in their back pocket, which I'm all for. I actually don't want WWE to show us their best hand right now. I want a subpar hand. And it's weird to ask, but given the fact that I'm okay with a delayed satisfaction or a delayed, I don't know, there's a phrase for that. Delayed satisfaction is the one I'm thinking of. That I'm okay with that because I know what they could have presented is going to be much better in front of a live audience than if they did it in front of no fans or few fans. So it's weird to ask for that, but they're doing the best they can with the B plan that they have. But anyway, back to your point. I'm okay with that. You just got to be careful if it's in front of almost nobody.
No, it like I said, it would be something different for the small man to be the guy that's attacking everybody and screwing up matches, and because he screws up like a tag team title shot or whatever, now these, you know, upstarts get a tag match or a title match and things like that. I just thought about it like on the fly when we were talking, but it's because it's going to build towards Dominic. We both know it's going to build towards Dominic, and I still think Dominic will start his career as a heel. He's probably going to be with Seth, and I think it's going to be beautiful. And I think it's good because he's going to be around really talented wrestlers, and they're going to help him with his in-ring, his psychology, everything else. But when it comes down to it, I want the blow-off to be really good. And I just thought, like, because I'm not really huge on Mysterio anymore. I mean, he's my age. He's 44. You know, he might be older than me. And I don't see a ton left in his future. I see him at the Performance Center being a great trainer, probably the best in the world. But with that being said, I can't see him in any championship matches. I can't see him in major storylines. This is the right storyline for him to be in, to write off his career, bring his son in, but not overexpose it. Let's not do this like Virgil Ted DiBiase where miraculously Virgil wins when he was always just a lackey. I think we have a lot on the table.
Yeah, we do, and that could be a very nice send-off. I think that if, you know, I was Rey Mysterio and I had my son that was looking to follow my footsteps, that I would want to implement a storyline that it kind of passes the torch, so to speak, to my son. However that may be done, and that could be the deal. I honestly don't know and haven't heard the conditions or the expiration date of Rey Mysterio's contract. But and again, in for that extent, Dominic's in-ring ability. I mean, again, like you said, we don't know. So there's a lot of moving parts here. There's a lot going on. I really am curious to see what the payoff is. The payoff hasn't really been clear. You would assume that it's Rey Mysterio versus Seth one-on-one. But Dominic is clearly trying to get himself physically involved here. So maybe it's a tag match of sorts. You know, Rey and Dominic versus Seth and his two cronies. Maybe. But I don't know what the end game is. But I'm okay with that. They're clearly playing the long game with this story, and I love it. So, okay, the big deal on Monday Night Raw has been not so much Drew McIntyre, and we'll get to McIntyre and Ziggler after this, but Big Show hunting down Randy Orton, and that seems to be the story that they're telling right now, and look like they're going to tell through Extreme Rules and maybe into SummerSlam, which I have my own thoughts on Orton, who he's going to face at SummerSlam, but How are you enjoying the Big Show hunting down Randy Orton and really Ric Flair getting involved now too? I mean, this is a throwback angle in terms of the names involved in this.
So, didn't we do this like 20 years ago? We're going to start out there. They said when Pritchard got control of everything, he wanted to make sure that Vince McMahon wanted more established stars to have the spotlight. This does nothing for me. I like the way they're going for it. Or, excuse me, let me reiterate. I like the way they're going with it as far as their ages and how well they're acting and performing. Because they are both on top of their game for their ages and how long they've been in this. A lot of people would have dropped out a long time ago, but they're giving it their all. I give them. The fact is, there is no future. That what happens after? And that's what's killing me. So it's like, why are you giving me something that we saw 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, and maybe 14 years ago because you did it a few times. So it doesn't make sense. Now, I've got a soft spot for the Big Show because anybody that size who put himself in that shape and reinvented himself a lot of times, even though he was never the greatest in ring, and he probably had the worst chokeslam of all time, let's be honest. But the man keeps working out, taking care of his body, his heart, everything else. And if you're a larger person, you really need to do that. Randy Orton, of course, is Randy Orton, but he's not Randy Orton of 10 years ago. He's not Randy Orton of 5 years ago. He's just Randy Orton. And usually when one of these feuds come up, say it was Randy Orton versus Seth Rollins, you're going to bank on Seth Rollins. You know, we've got a new face. Or Big Show and Kane were the giant jobbers for a long time, and 13, 14, and 15, and it was easy to watch TV. It was bathroom segments. Okay, they're gonna job to the Shield. They're gonna job to this, job to that. It sucks for them. So I don't know how to feel about this because I don't really know where they're going. I think Orton's gonna win. Basically, it's to me very easily missed television.
I could see where you would feel that way. It's a bunch of guys in this story that the median age of these men in this story is probably 50 plus. I mean, like you're like low 50s. If you add in Ric Flair's, of course, skewing the whole median age, yeah. But this is. I guess I'm not as down as you are on this, simply for the fact that, number one, we haven't seen Big Show in a while, and I was back in the whole authority era with Kane and Big Show being a tag team, and like Big Show was just overexposed for just way too long, and he never felt really that special because I think he was always on the show. He wasn't a true attraction. He was just kind of there. And he flipped from heel to babyface a record number of times. Like somebody actually counted it. It's like 50 plus times in his career that he's switched from heel to babyface. That, of course, does no favors either for a character that you can't get behind because there's no integrity to the character. It's just always flip-flopping. So Big Show in this story, I will say this. Big Show, since I haven't seen him in a while, as I said, makes it feel a little bit more special. And he made it feel special, too, a little bit when he came out and faced Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania right after he had won the belt. He kind of pops in, pops out, and he seems like he's in this storyline a little bit longer, if not the longest he's been since he really left his weekly Raw appearances. And he feels more natural. He doesn't feel like he's playing a character so much as he's kind of just talking about... He's like being Paul White, but he's also the Big Show. His promos have been good. He's a very witty guy. He shows his intelligence at times during the promos, and I like that they are bringing back a legend because Randy Orton has now transitioned back to the Legend Killer. And I made this point on a show last week, and I don't know if it's by design. I don't know if it's just coincidence or the wrestling gods just playing their games. But when you look at the overall WWE pool of characters going on and the storylines going on, there are a lot of characters that are descending into darkness, or at least concerned that they will. What I mean by that is, you have Braun Strowman, who is teasing that he may go full heel because he may not be able to come back from the swamp fight. And I was going to ask you about that also today, but we have obviously Randy Orton going back to the Legend Killer. You have Edge saying he's going back to being the rated R superstar. You have Big Show, who has now said that he's not the lovable giant. He's going out as an angry giant. It's weird that you have all of these darker versions of characters, and I'm sure I'm missing one or two, that are evolving. Yeah. I mean, that are evolving at the same time. So I don't know if that's coincidence or not.
No, I mean, it's 50-50, you know, like it's always older people that are evolving right now because that's what Vince wants to push. That's why he has Bruce in charge of everything. And but I love that word you used, evolving, because let's talk something I want to bring up, and I don't know if you're ready for this in the show or not, but Evolve was bought by WWE this week.
Yes, it was.
And so I'm sitting here like a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking about when Paul Heyman got fired. I thought, who are they going to bring in? Because Pritchard can't do both shows, and there's no way that you can still bank on the same people in the next 2 or 3 years. Big Show, gone. His knees, no. Randy Orton, he's going to probably go to Hollywood. He's making as much money as he can in wrestling, but he'll be like John Cena. He'll make pretty boy money in Hollywood. And I was like, he's not going to bring back anybody he's fired. And I thought, Gabe Sapolsky. There was a reason that he made Evolve a conduit. And I feel that he's going to be the next booker of one of the programs. Definitely. And I think that was one of but the other thing, and this is to everybody out there who is going through hard times. I'm not Dusty Rhodes, but you're going through hard times, you're unemployed. The man fired or laid off 60 or 70 people, but he just bought a company. So your frustrations are not alone.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah. That's a heck of a point. And yeah, you did. You just let these talent go, and then you acquire another company. Granted, they're not exactly the large. It's not like WWE acquiring WCW back in 2001, but it's still nonetheless a message that WWE sent that is not. It shouldn't be well received, given the fact that they just let, as you said, like 60 plus wrestlers go a couple of months ago. So yeah, that is. And I actually didn't even have that on my agenda. I'm glad you brought this up about Evolve. And could Gabe Sapolsky be, the next Booker T or whoever? I mean, he could be. He's 47 years old. The guy is successful. I mean, for what he did. And he was I think he was the vice president of talent relations. I think for WWE at one point, or I think he has potential. I think there is something there with Gabe Sapolsky that they're bringing him in for a reason. And they obviously just acquired all of the footage and video footage for their WWE network, so their library has now expanded. So
exactly. Here's an interesting fact. Before WWE Network launched, the WWN Network, which was Evolve being part of, and Gabe Sapolsky, I believe, being the head man in charge, he had his own network, which WWN, and all of a sudden Vince McMahon worked out this whole deal with him and then launched his network. There's been speculation and rumors that Vince McMahon couldn't launch the network because Sapolsky had the rights to wrestling and broadcasting wrestling on the internet through a pay-per-view or a paid service, because WWN had it first. It's an interesting little tidbit that was out there.
Huh. That, I have not heard of that. That is, wow. I mean, there's a lot here. I think, I mean, given that this just happened and I have not seen, and I was trying to search for financials of like, what did WWE spend on this? We haven't seen anything. Have you? Have you seen numbers?
No, see, that's an interesting fact to me too, because I know that he got WCW for $2 million, and I mean that was what it was reported, right?
Yes.
And which is a joke. I have friends who have that kind of money, and they weren't going to buy WCW by any stretch. But the fact is, I think that there was a holdout. I think there was more money because you also get the WWN network, and that was FIP and Shimmer and a couple other things that gets thrown in there. So the library's huge. So I could see Sapolsky being like, all right, let's go 5-6 million or something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised. And I don't know what the holdup is for not releasing the numbers. I mean, WWE is a public network, or a publicly traded company. You would think that they would disclose this. I'm sure they will. But
Exactly.
I don't know what the reasoning is for not seeing it up front. Typically, you see at least estimated numbers or a number that can be, kind of adjusted up or down. I've seen nothing. I've seen no numbers. So, yeah, it could be. It could be even more than WCW. I mean, given the fact of they got that at a basement bargain price. So, interesting. I'm glad you brought up Evolve, because that's going to, I guess, pun intended, evolve as the story goes on and as the weeks go on. So, alrighty. So I think we covered Big Show and Orton, and I can't wait for Edge to come back, which I think is going to happen towards the end of the year, if not at the Royal Rumble, which would be very apropos given that he re-debuted at this year's Royal Rumble at number 21. So we'll have to see on that. I think Orton eventually and ultimately faces Christian at SummerSlam. I don't think it's going to be a Big Show versus Orton match at SummerSlam. I think it's Christian. I think Christian is going to be the one to come back, maybe save Big Show if there's a match at Extreme Rules between the two from a punt, and having Christian attack Orton to save Big Show after Orton beats Big Show, and then having Christian and Orton build their 5-week build to SummerSlam. Do you have any objections to that, or do you think that's probably where they're going?
No, it makes the most sense, because they've been talking a long time about Christian making a return to the ring, and he being, kind of like Edge and not being as messed up as you thought, but has, 5 or 6 good matches left. I could see that, and it's good drama. Let's get the Big Show out of there. I love the guy. It's time to just transfer and work with Matt Bloom and get down to NXT, and especially for the new big guys that they're signing who are like basketball players and everything else that don't know anything. You're the man to teach them. So I want to see a good send off. If Big Show has another couple years in this wrestling world, I'm surprised. I get one-offs, but no. Now, as far as Christian goes, I wouldn't mind seeing Christian have a couple more matches. And yeah, I see that. I see Christian being the savior, and then Christian just kind of avenging Edge, and then eventually he gets put down and Edge comes back and Edge gets his revenge and we all get happy.
And I think that's not going to happen, though, until WrestleMania next year. Personally, I think, given the fact that the timetable for Edge, and honestly, I've said this before and I feel bad saying it, but this could be the best thing that happened to Edge right now. Getting injured right now is the best time you could possibly get injured, given the fact there are no fans. It's not a great time to perform anyway. You're putting yourself at risk. The performers are putting themselves at risk. Yeah, I know they have health protocols, of which we know how that's worked out. And that is something that, again, if you're going to get injured, now is the time to do it, because depending on your injury, of course, you should be back in time for WrestleMania season, which I think Edge will perfectly time out for, given the timetable I've heard for his torn tricep. So I think it's going to work perfectly. Hopefully, my God, there's fans next year in Hollywood, although California is not doing well with the coronavirus. No. So hopefully they resolve that. I mean, they got, 7 months or so, 8 months, more than that, to resolve this before WrestleMania. They'll probably have to make a determination, though, probably 6 months from now, 7 months from now. So, again, I think that's how Edge comes back, Royal Rumble. After Orton goes on a tear, boom, Edge comes out, and Randy Orton, his eyes pop out of his head, and Edge and everybody loses their minds. So, all right, one last thing on Monday Night Raw that I wanted to ask you about is Drew McIntyre. And they lost this week to Sasha and, who was it? Sasha and Ziggler. So
yeah, I hate mixed tags, but go on.
I know the rule. I know. Me too. But so they lost. McIntyre and Asuka lose to Sasha and Ziggler after Sasha gets the roll up on Asuka, the dreaded, just devastating roll up that is just running rampant in WWE right now. That cradles and roll ups and schoolboys and whatever it may be. Just everybody needs to get rid of their finisher and just adopt the roll-up, because that is how you end a match now. You can kick people in the face, in the teeth, in the head. None of that really does anything. That's the true roll-up that will end the match. And so I guess beyond the match, because it was what it was, McIntyre and Ziggler, how are you feeling about that? And how are you feeling about Asuka and Sasha? I guess twofold question.
Oh, that's great. I'll start with Asuka and Sasha. I think they're going to put on a great match. I think it's going to be amazing. I both are so amazingly talented. If they let Asuka be Asuka like she was in Japan, and let Sasha just have a little free reign, it could steal the show. It could definitely steal the show. As far as Ziggler and McIntyre. So McIntyre's going to win. That's pretty easy. It's kind of water, you could see through it if you were blind. It's bad. And I hate it. I hate it for everybody that's involved. I see Bobby Roode getting involved and try to get some extra heat, but come on. I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. They're really pushing McIntyre to the moon because he's the guy that they always wanted Roman Reigns to be, and he's the guy that they always wanted him to be years ago. And, it's like we said before on the shows, they all look alike. I mean, if Adam Cole was 6 inches taller and 200 pounds heavier, who did he look like? Well, I guess that answers itself. It is what it is.
Yeah.
They have a look. They want their look, and they want that look protected. And what I see, the ugliness is that something's going to happen at Extreme Rules that we really don't care about. That's going to set up the next feud for Drew McIntyre. And I'm going to tell you, what if you have nothing, no storyline or no big heel, what's it going to be? I mean, a question for you.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I could see this. So with Drew McIntyre, here's the thing, and then I'm kind of torn because right now Bobby Lashley has been pushed back into obscurity. I know he had this match with Ricochet and he destroyed Ricochet and all that stuff. So
yeah, I hate that.
Lashley has been put on pause and pushed back out of the title picture. And hopefully Lana is gone into oblivion and I never have to see or hear from Lana again. I really don't want to. I'm so done with Lana. And again, I don't mean that WWE should fire her. I'm never advocating for someone losing their job. But at the same time, I am beyond over Lana. She's not a heel character. It's not like I want to see somebody beat her up. I just want to see her off my TV. There's a difference between wanting to change the channel and wanting to invest in a product to see somebody get their ass kicked. And that's not what I feel with Lana. She's just... Anyway, so what I see with Drew McIntyre is probably once he dispatches Dolph, of which, as you said, it's so predictable it's not funny. Could Robert Roode get involved? Of course, because he was told that was part of the trade for AJ Styles going to SmackDown. That's what we were told. of which I still don't think that's a fair trade. Like, I still don't believe.
It's diminishing to both of them. They're like, two of you were traded for one, and you're not even a real tag team.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. So to me, the value of AJ Styles should probably have been like a 4-for-1. Maybe there's more to come. We don't know. We weren't definitively told. If it was only 2, it was just noted that it was at that time just Dolph and Robert Roode for AJ Styles. So anyway, I see Lashley getting back into the title picture. I could also see at the end of Extreme Rules, or at the Monday Night Raw after Extreme Rules, Brock Lesnar's music hitting. I mean, it's getting to that time of year now where Brock comes back out of hibernation after his WrestleMania slumber and comes back out, and he comes back in for his SummerSlam match. That to me is probably where they're going. And I've long thought that it could be a number of things. There are three scenarios to me in which Drew McIntyre has a SummerSlam match. It's Lashley versus McIntyre. It's McIntyre versus Lesnar, or it's a triple threat with Lashley versus Lesnar versus McIntyre.
Timeline, my friend. Sullivan.
Ooh, I haven't heard. Is he?
He's supposed to be getting close to be cleared by now.
Oh boy.
And I have no idea what they're going to do with him just because of the bad press and everything else and the adult videos, but this is supposed to be his return time. That's always been his timeline with SummerSlam. So, he great friends with Braun Strowman, great friends with Brock Lesnar. There's a reason his job has been protected when many would have been fired in his stupidity and everything else he's done.
Oh, agreed.
And I'm thinking, like, last time we spoke, we were talking about like Backlash, and I thought that he might be the enforcer. I thought about he could be Bray Wyatt's enforcer and take over stuff from Strowman. But right now, if you don't build up Lashley again, which putting him in this feud with Apollo Crews is so stupid. I love Apollo. I've always had a soft spot for him. The guy is way too talented to be stuck losing to MVP, even to the dreaded roll-up or whatever else. They took a champion and they defecated on the title. With that being said, that's not about that. Point is, that's got to be the trump card. It has to be Sullivan. If you don't have Sullivan, I don't know, but it just makes the most sense with if we're this close to SummerSlam next month, and 3 weeks is not enough just to build up something. They tried with Lashley. It looked like garbage. Lashley came out looking a little bit better, but not good. And then being put in a mid-card thing, are we really going to expect him to go against McIntyre and win? No. So you bring out the elephant. You bring out Sullivan, and I would actually have him cut a promo where he doesn't care about his past and is just angry. If you're going to keep the guy employed, and you find him $100,000, and you fired so many other people, and this guy's still on your payroll, he better deliver. And he better be the guy to deliver it.
I never even thought of Lars Sullivan. I didn't. Again, my timetable on him, I don't want to say I forgot about him, but he's been out for so long that he's not exactly somebody that you think of as, I can't wait till he comes back, because he's had so many setbacks. And yes, he had the $100,000 fine, and so he's paid his penance for that, and so hopefully he comes back and it's with true intent, and WWE has a plan for him. Could it be Lars? You could absolutely be right. I mean, it could be. The thing is, though, is there a better story with Brock Lesnar versus McIntyre, given that he beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania? There could be. I would also be totally fine with Bobby Lashley versus McIntyre if Bobby Lashley starts to, again, we said this last time, I need Bobby Lashley to go on a tear. And he is going on a tear, albeit on a lower level. So it doesn't have the same weight as if he was just tearing through some top talent. I get it. And so I think ultimately Lesnar is going to make his debut. I'm fine with Lars Sullivan. I think Lars Sullivan would be a new face. It would feel fresh. It would feel like maybe Drew McIntyre. Yeah, exactly. And it would feel like Drew McIntyre's belt is possibly in true jeopardy. But again, I think that Vince is so intoxicated by Brock Lesnar that that's probably the route that he's going to go, is Brock Lesnar returning at Extreme Rules to leave Drew McIntyre laying at the end of the show, or on Monday Night Raw to leave Drew McIntyre laying and holding the belt up, and Paul Heyman throwing out a challenge for SummerSlam. It's getting to that time of the year. I just don't see SummerSlam without Brock Lesnar this year. I just don't. So while I agree with you on Lars Sullivan, I really believe that that's probably a later in the year thing.
Well, there's the worst case scenario, Otis.
No, please.
I was trying to elicit a laugh out of you. Okay,
it's just a groan at this point. Yeah. Oh God.
I know that's the biggest disappointment. There's bigger disappointments, but yeah, that's. I mean, when you and I talk and we get going, like we can fantasy book way better than they can, and it's so funny. Like we're the people that they're supposed to be marketing to. Like, where are you guys? Yeah. So something I want to touch on real quick. Apollo Crews' meteoric U.S. title reign. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of him. Losing MVP makes me angry. This whole stable and they're trying to recruit him makes me angry because this is not the time to make racial stables. And then to have Lashley come out and, crush Cedric and Ricochet, who are both incredibly talented and should be somewhere else on the card. I just see a lot of racial demographic. I don't like it, and I think that there's way too many people, regardless of the color of their skin, that are being wasted. And I just want to leave it right there. I'm just gonna put it on the table. You don't have to eat it. It is what it is. It's the same thing with, Humberto Carrillo keeps getting in wrestling matches with Andrade, although this week it was with Seth and Murphy, but is that supposed to be racial equality? I don't know. I don't want to open that can of worms. I'm just saying there's a lot of people whose talents are being wasted, and it just bothers me, but that is what it is.
Well, Vince McMahon doesn't have the best record when it comes to presenting minorities in a non-comedic, true threatening, top-tier talent type of presentation. I mean, he just doesn't. I mean, my first and foremost example, I mean, you have two of them. Crime Time. You have Mexicools. I mean, you have R-Truth at times being and playing the kind of wacky character. Vince does not have the greatest record of presenting minorities. So I'm with you. You got to be very careful again. I know that they're an entertainment company, but there's really no company or business safe from what's going on right now. I mean, again, it's tough not to get into politics, so I won't. But if you're not immune, no matter what you do, nobody is safe from what's happening right now, and the political correctness police are everywhere. So, with that said, should WWE be presenting the minorities, like you said, with Humberto Carrillo, with Andrade and Angel Garza facing off against one another and having some kind of beef with one another, of which, to be honest, as heels, am I supposed to care about that? Right? And they just formed. This group can't get going. They cannot get off the ground. There's constant there's constant turmoil. I know Zelina Vega's there, and she does her best to really hold everything together, and you know how much I love her presentation and what she brings to the table.
She's great.
She's brilliant. I mean, she's absolutely brilliant. But the fact of the matter is, this group that they're they put together, and then immediately after that, Drew McIntyre was just eating them alive every week with Claymore. Austin Theory gets disbanded. Then there's this inner turmoil with Andrade and Angel Garza, of which, again, they're heels. Why should we care what heels are getting angry at each other for? And then it's like, okay, so like, is this group going anywhere? And then, yes, Apollo Crews as United States champion, being recruited or trying to be recruited by MVP, which eventually, honestly, I think he'll cave. I just do.
Yeah, I want to see him as a heel, actually, but I want to see him be a badass.
I do too, and because we've seen, the thing is, I'm a fan of Apollo Crews too, but we've seen this smiling, happy-go-lucky, just happy to be here version of Apollo Crews for way too long now. Way too long. He's great in the ring. The announcers put him over like $1 million. He deserves to be in a title picture opportunity, and he's now United States champion. But he hasn't really had a character evolution almost at all. Like, he is the same guy that he debuted from NXT, albeit way too early, that came up to the main roster, and that's pretty much, for all intents and purposes, that same guy. He's got that same feel, the same look. I want an evolution of the character, even if it is in the group with Bobby Lashley MVP. Again, as you said, though, does WWE go that road, given what's going on in the world? I don't think that... I think you can do it. You shouldn't not do it simply because of what's going on, but you have to be very careful of how they're presented, right? Like, how are they being presented? Are they a laughing stock? Are they a true badass team, of which I would subscribe for? And they're champions, right? Like, if Lashley ends up winning the WWE Championship, of which I hope he eventually does, he's deserving. And you have Apollo Crews hold the United States Championship, I think you'd be okay, because you have this group holding major gold. They're not being presented as just like, sacrificial lambs every single Monday night. So I think it's doable. I think that would be the best thing for Apollo Crews' career. I really do.
Now, a heel turn, I think he could be the most over person if, when they have a live audience, just come out and just attack somebody you love. Like, I'm trying to think, like somebody we really adore, Rey Mysterio, and just beat him mercifully, or merciless, excuse me, and just continue to powerbomb him. And the two can work it to where they can use like apron power bombs, use the ropes, everything. Not even a match. He just beats the man, grabs the mic, says nothing, drops it, and walks away. And there are ways to use the guy. They just don't use the guy, and it whatever. I mean, I'm not going to get on that tangent, but the point is, like, what we talk about, what we like, other people don't like. Like, I think we're both agreeing that we're not really big fans of The Miz, but there are other people out there who are like, The Miz is great, and like, wow, you're special needs. But, I can't tell somebody that my favorite color is blue and they love red, and blue's better than red. It's their favorite color. So I don't know. We get in these weird areas where we I guess we just look at like the history, and we look at like the last 20 years and more and more and more. And in my case, more and more and more. And man, I miss so much good booking and 6-month booking, which the NWA had. Oh, it was so great. So
again, you see flashes of it at times, right? Like, you see like, oh, maybe they were planning this forever. And I think Vince, from year to year, has an idea of the big main events he wants at WrestleMania, and you have to obviously backtrack your booking from there. You got to know where you're going to be able to breadcrumb yourself back to the present. So I think he has an idea for big matches. Probably 3 out of the 12 matches at WrestleMania, he's like, I want this, and I want this for sure, and we'll figure out the rest as we go along. And so while long-term booking is all but dead, given Vince McMahon's reports of Vince tearing up the script of Raw 15 minutes before the show and all this chaos, which I agree, I think is absolutely true. I mean, like, from all reports and cases I've heard, absolutely true. Vince probably does long-term book, but only for major matches, like big-time main event of WrestleMania, semi-main event of WrestleMania, and one other maybe special attraction match. That's how I think Vince McMahon books his year-to-year WrestleMania. But long-term booking, it's not. I think it's non-existent. I think it's probably long-term booking has been redefined to like 1 month. I mean that is unfortunately how long-term booking has been redefined, and it's a shame. So I've only got a couple more points, and then I'll close things out and hand it to you. I guess without going on a rant on this, just quick thoughts, because we could absolutely destroy this, but we haven't even seen it yet. The swamp fight with Bray Wyatt as now the cult leader version of Bray Wyatt. He now has 3 personalities. Maybe he talked to Mick Foley about how to advance his character, and he's going to be facing Braun Strowman in a swamp fight. And this, again, my quick thing on this, and I'll toss it to you. I don't mind the story. I think the story is they're pulling on everything that they possibly could pull on. They were in a group together. He was the black sheep. Braun Strowman is saying that he met the evil guy at this swamp, that he brought him in. They're trying to create a backstory for it. I respect that and appreciate it. I'm glad they're at least attempting, even if it's unbelievable. I at least have something that's unbelievable than no attempt at all. So that's good. Braun Strowman probably cut the best promo of his career last week on SmackDown. I mean, the week before.
True.
Easily probably cut the best promo of his career. And not having Bray Wyatt on every SmackDown is great. Not having him go right to The Fiend is great. I think they're reserving that for SummerSlam. So these levels of Bray Wyatt, where you have the happy-go-lucky but kind of evil, sinister kids show host, and then you have the next level up, which is this swamp cult leader, and then you have the ultimate version, like the maxed out version of Bray Wyatt, which is The Fiend. If that's how it's going to go, where there's multiple levels, I'm cool with it. We all thought this swamp cult leader was dead, and he's not. I'm looking forward to this, despite the fact that you and I despise the cinematic version. I give them props and give them credit for at least trying to create a backstory and create something that really is out of nothing, and I respect that.
Okay, here's my situation. We've both agreed that Bray doesn't need the title, but they don't know who to put the title on SmackDown. They would have actually been better putting on Ziggler and keeping him there and actually giving him the push that he deserved many, many years ago, as opposed to the fact that they're in a sticky situation. Roman Reigns backed out. We didn't know what to do. We're scared, so we put it on our new version of Andre the Giant. And as many of the classics, Ross, Cornette, all the old guys, Shivani, you don't ever put something on a beast you can't take it off of. That's why the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, whatever you want to call them, only held the belts occasionally. Because how do you take them off them? So now we got a situation where we've got a giant beast of a man who's inhumanly strong. But he's not a special attraction. He's on every week. So that cheapens it. And so how do we take the belt off him? Well, we're going to have a swamp match. It's going to be cinematic. It's going to be hokey. The point is, as long as we get the belt off Strowman, things will be okay. Because I can't see anybody I want him to feud with. This is the other thing where Lars Sullivan could come in too. Because how do we believe he's so much ginormous and stronger than anybody else? Let's bring in a brute. Let's bring in somebody as tough as him. That could be Lesnar. It could be Lesnar on Fridays now. That's what Fox originally wanted. So that makes sense to me. But you have to have somebody that you can believe beat your world champion. The other thing is, I don't know anybody who's actually behind Strowman. I don't. And so, one, I feel bad for him. I don't really for his finances, but, I feel bad for the fact that he's a boring champion. I haven't seen a champion this boring since Sergeant Slaughter. and that was a transitional thing. This is a transitional thing. It's supposed to be Reigns. They're getting the results they want with, McIntyre. So if you have a face on one side, you have to have the heel on the other channel. So the match, I think, is going to be garbage. We're going to see a lot of hokey stuff. We might see goofy ex-wrestlers in there, like Tony Atlas making an appearance, just stuff that we don't want to see. At the end, we're just going to kind of giggle and be angry about it. But that belt, if it walks away with Strowman, it's going to be catastrophe. And if they don't have something to set him up for SummerSlam, the more I think about it, I mean, he's the one that needs Sullivan more than anything else, I think.
This one is, we know what it's going to be from a presentation standpoint. It's going to be everything we hate about wrestling or their WWE presentation of wrestling all wrapped into one. I don't think it can get much worse than Money in the Bank, and I say that hesitantly, and I hope that that's not their goal, is to make it even more hokey than Money in the Bank. But given it's in a swamp, it's automatically a darker place. I would think they're going to go dark. That's what this whole character of Bray Wyatt is. It's evil, it's dark, it's nasty, it's revenge driven. I hope that they go as dark as they can. It will be just what the title of the pay-per-view says. It'll be like a horror show or horror movie. If they want to present it as a horror movie from the WWE film studio, whatever, I'm just saying F it and throwing up my hands at this point and just going with it. Now, with that said, who should have the belt? Yes, Strowman should drop it. First of all, Strowman, as you said, incredibly boring as a character. Up until 2 weeks ago when he finally showed that he can cut a decent promo and something that has depth to it, he was just tipping big things over. He's the monster among men. He's just this big, strong oaf that doesn't have a whole lot of depth to him other than he's just a big guy that can lift a lot of weight. Okay, great. Like, that's what his character was for all intents and purposes, and they're starting to add depth to it. That's what you need to do. But with that said, here's the thing. When in doubt, and I've held firm on this, all roads lead to Roman Reigns. I've held firm on that for years. Whenever in doubt and you don't know where things are going, just turn to Roman Reigns. I understand he's not on the active roster right now, but as things improve, I believe that WWE is starting to look at this picture and go, okay, when Roman comes back, who do we want him to face for the championship? Can't do Braun Strowman. They've done that in the past, and a babyface versus a babyface, it's not usually a match you go for. Let's give them the match they all thought they were gonna get at WrestleMania with Braun Strowman, or with the Fiend versus Roman Reigns. And I think eventually when Roman comes back, that may be his first program. It could be Bray Wyatt versus Roman Reigns for the championship. I think that's probably where they're going. So with that said, I still believe Braun Strowman will retain in the swamp fight, but I think that at SummerSlam, when Braun Strowman faces the third version of Bray Wyatt, which is the Fiend, that Braun Strowman will lose to the Fiend at SummerSlam, which sets up a Roman Reigns return down the line, whenever that may be, sometime after August. And I think that's how it's going to go.
Well, and I dig a Reigns return. I would like that. Because, like I said, as much garbage as people give Reigns, it makes me angry because the guy is talented. It was leaked that he was the guy, But aside from that, he wouldn't be the guy today. We don't know. And there's one other thing that could happen in the swamp. Are you ready for it?
I guess. Go ahead.
Otis again. Ah!
Oh my! If he pops out of the water,
it could happen.
Yep.
If it's going to be cinematic, that could totally happen and be stupid enough to where like he pops out of the water and puts his hand on Bray's feet, and it's like something out of Friday the 13th, and they get a 3 count. But at that point, I mean, you might as well just take your stock and flush it down the toilet.
There are,
but it could happen.
There's seriously are about 30 guys on the roster I would put as champion before Otis, or maybe more.
I would too. Like
Yeah.
Walter.
Seriously, maybe more, maybe 40, 50 guys before Otis. There are so many reasons to never put the belt on Otis. And I say never, but at least at this point, he has been reduced to this kind of buffoon that is clearly a comedy act that Vince McMahon saw as this guy that has a big funny belly and he likes to eat food and all the terrible stereotypes, and he doesn't talk normal, and he's supposed to be the working common man. He's anything but. Like, he's anything but at this point. He's unrelatable. It's a
parody of Dusty Rhodes. It's a shot at Cody. Everybody gets it. We know it. You know it. I'll just say it. I don't care. The fact is, like, the guy is talented. I honestly, would I take the titles off the New Day and put them on Heavy Machinery? Yes.
Yep.
For many reasons. Because honestly, Machinery can work if you let them work and not let just Otis be Otis. You know, and I get it because Otis was the drunk from Mayberry. So they're really trying to jab at Cody and everything else, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get on that side street. I'm just going to say, like, I think they could be great. Like, they could be great tag team champions, and I think they could have great tag team matches, but the whole situation he's in is terrible. I honestly feel bad for the performer.
Me too.
Because he knows he's a parody. And how do you sleep at night knowing that, like, you know, everybody, they say some wrestlers aren't too big for the belts, but really you get into it because you want to be a champion. And to know, like, you're a joke. You know, you might be like R-Truth and getting $1 million contract. No one knows why. Okay, you can sleep at night, but Otis trying to, you know, think, okay, what am I going to do next week to make myself look stupid? And everybody makes fun of me, even though I've got a hot, great, beautiful girlfriend. They make fun of me every day, and they want people to make fun of me. How do you sleep at night? And you as the booker, how do you book that? I want to know how that person sleeps at night trying to demean somebody. Sorry.
No, the whole Otis thing is, it's funny, man. Andy Griffith reference. I've never would have thought of that with the drunk from Mayberry. That's funny. Many of our listeners probably don't even know what the Andy Griffith show is. But nonetheless, this Otis deal is, it went from the guy in Heavy Machinery that's like entertaining and, you know, was clearly the star of the team and was fun to watch, and he was good with Tucker, to, you know, they got an opportunity for the belts and they didn't make it, but you could see them as champions in the future, to this guy that Vince saw and saw what he looked like, and then took that to the extreme of making him like drink, I don't know, like gravy or having barbecue sauce or whatever, and having the food fight, which was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life at Money in the Bank. And just this guy is obsessed with food, and he has, you know, wears a shirt that's 4 sizes too small, and all these things. It's just, I'll tell you, if he wins the championship, I don't know. I mean, it may be one, like an X-rated version of this show. I mean, I don't see the appeal of Otis, because they just went too far too fast, and they didn't do what they should have done with him and leave him in a damn tag team. They didn't even let him breathe in the tag team. They barely got off the ground as a team. And that's a shame, because the tag team division is, again, it shows you Vince's lack of priority when it comes to the tag team division, because as really shallow as the tag team division is as a whole, on both the men's and women's side for sure, he immediately went, oh, there's a star, let's pull him out of the tag team. This is more important than that Heavy Machinery stuff. This is, you know, that's what Vince did. He took him out of a team that was just starting to get going and put him in a singles role, because he values that clearly way more than a tag team right now. So
like I tried to tell people, like, oh, it makes so much sense, it's entertaining. I'm like, stop using the E word. It's wrestling. Okay, so I grew up on Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff and like people bleeding and giving some of the greatest matches you've ever seen, Steamboat and Flair. And you tell me if Steamboat or Flair or any one of the greats, Rick Rude, you tell them that they were approached this, they would laugh, especially being part of a tag team. It's like if the Bushwhackers, which they tried to pattern them after when they first came out, and I hate the Bushwhackers because they were the Sheepherders and they were an amazing team, and then they became the Bushwhackers and licked heads, and we've covered this, but the point is, if somebody suddenly gave the Money in the Bank to Bushwhacker Butch, how would the booking be in 1992?
Same thing. Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. That's an interesting parallel. And those that don't know who the Bushwhackers are, go back and look. You will see our analogy, or you'll see Michael's reference there. It is very close in proximity to Otis, because the answer is you wouldn't. And like you said with the E word, to me, yeah, if somebody says entertaining, that was entertaining, that tells me that you haven't been a fan for very long. And that you are brainwashed and just eat whatever is fed by the company, the corporate version of WWE. And that's really what it is. And whatever, that's the next generation of fans. I mean, you don't know any better. You just get started and you're watching wrestling. Oh, that's entertaining. They're telling me it's entertaining, so it's entertaining. Whatever. Like, that's not how I grew up. That's not how you grow up. To me, the only E word is emotion. And that's the E word that is missing from today's product, is largely, not all. Again, we outlined some really good things going on right now, but it's emotion. If you don't feel emotion, you're not connected. If you're not connected, you don't watch. If you don't watch, you aren't buying the merchandise, which is the money part of what WWE is in this for. Money. They're a for-profit company. Without emotion, it all starts at emotionally invested. And if you aren't there, you aren't watching, you aren't dumping money into the company. So that's the only E word I prescribe to.
No, it's great because and if any of our listeners have never read Titan Sinking, if you've never read that book, you really need to. And how, like, Vince, not just scandals, but made, like, really, really poor booking decisions. And this is like, the time where we had main events, headlined by Mabel, because we all remember those classics, right? And how, they went down to venues that ECW was doing the same size. And that's when Vince actually contacted Heyman to start getting ideas, but that's another side story. The point is, Vince doesn't always make the right decisions. And he's not making some good decisions now. The cinematic stuff, the Otis stuff, just if you love wrestling, you love wrestling. You don't love garbage. And we're getting a lot of garbage right now. And, honestly, I know you're not a big Ring of Honor guy, but if you have fun, watch Ring of Honor. If you don't want goofy cinematic stuff that should be in a movie, watch Ring of Honor. Major League Wrestling, same thing. They're doing stuff. It's out there on YouTube. It's out there on, other broadcast networks. But the fact is, they're not doing cinematic stuff and pushing garbage people. They're pushing the right people. And it's sad because they, unfortunately, I don't think can pay everybody what they want to pay them. So a lot of them jump ship to Impact and wherever else and higher paying gigs that becomes what we are discussing, that we're disgusted about. So, but there is alternatives out there, folks. I want you to know that. So, but aside from that, that's my rant. I'm not going to rant anymore. I don't feel it's fair.
No, those are good. Just because I don't watch it, I mean, I know what Ring of Honor and the other promotions, MLW, bring to the table as far as a wrestling perspective, and that's wrestling, right? Because that's the entertainment. I don't need to be told it's entertainment to know that what I'm watching is entertainment. That's the kicker. And that's how you're entertained, is through being emotionally invested in simulated sports. And that's what WWE has really just kind of lost, or at least tried to even run from, because, again, we all know that they refuse to ever identify themselves as a pro wrestling company. But they are. I don't care if they try to mask it with entertainment or sports entertainment or whatever, or doesn't matter. You are pro wrestling at your core. I mean, and they will probably argue that to the death that, no, we're not. And Vince even said, no, that's what my father did. We're not pro wrestling. We're sports entertainment. No, you're pro wrestling. You wrestle. You have guys in the ring who are professionals that are simulating wrestling, right? So you are a professional wrestling company.
Wrestling company, yeah.
Yeah, it's just such it's a mask for what they would not like to be known as. But nonetheless, okay, to kind of close things out, quick answer: do you think the Undertaker's really done in terms of in-ring, like a match?
No.
Okay. How do you? No. What do you think I would assume that you think he has one more match. Then, if he does, who's it against?
It's Sting. Everybody wanted to see it, but you could watch it from 1992 and when it was Mean Mark. You know, I mean, there was Mean Mark Callis versus Sting in WCW, but, you know, I'm an old man, so, you know, I go back, but, you know, getting back into reality, it's got to be Sting. There's nobody else that if you're going to put people in seats every so many feet, it has to be Sting. And at this point, they cannot dangle a bigger carrot in front of him. And they know this. Goldberg, garbage. We know that. And I think Goldberg was drunk. But the point is, that's not this. Taker is done only coming back for Sting one time. And of course he's going to beat Sting, just like Sting couldn't beat Triple H. And that was a terrible, terrible, like, exclamation point that Vince was, like, rubbing his hands together on. Could have been better. Could have been way better. But point is, it's Sting. What about you?
Sting is my second option, even though I think the fear, though, is that Undertaker wants to go out with a good match. And if it's a total bomb of a match, then, you know, does he come back for another? It's that whole vicious cycle that we saw in the Undertaker Last Ride docuseries.
Yeah.
So, personally, I think it's probably Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, versus Undertaker, because there was hints of that last year with the Firefly Funhouse and his clock going to the date that Undertaker debuted. He's coming up on the exact 30th anniversary of his debut this November. I mean, to the day. So does Bray Wyatt do Bray Wyatt and the Undertaker have a stare off? Does Undertaker just choke slam him? Is it just limited interaction, or does it lead to a one more match all the way to WrestleMania 37 next year? I would lean towards, well, guaranteed we will see Undertaker at Survivor Series this year. I mean, it's a guarantee that he will be at Survivor Series. There's no question. But does it lead into a face-off with Bray, or does it lead to a full-on match program that goes from November to April? That's the question.
The poetic, beautiful way to book it is the Fiend, whenever he defeats somebody, reverts to who they used to be. So imagine, he beats him, and then the Undertaker becomes Mark Calloway, and then thanks him and says, I gotta go home. I'm done.
I like that. I mean, that's fine to me. I just don't believe that Undertaker is truly done. I know that they're trying to present it as such, but he never said I'm fully. He never said I am retired. Never. So.
Like I said, it's got to be Sting.
Yeah, I think
the only other, they might have Strowman retire him. Personally, Strowman, once you get the belt off him, I thought one last ride for Christopher Joseph Parks, whatever, Abyss. Because they always wanted Abyss versus Taker, but that's never going to happen. But Abyss still has it. He's a trainer down there. He wasn't furloughed. Let him have a ride with Strowman. Let Strowman retire him. That way you tie up Strowman for 6 months so we don't have to care about whatever he's doing. And we could have giant hoss matches. and Taker versus Wyatt, we could stretch it out for 6 months and have a lot of fun. But yeah, I would love that. Like at the end, Wyatt just takes care of him and like the Sister Abigail on the head, and then at the end he just takes everything off and he just says, "Yeah, I'm Mark Callis. I'm Mark Calloway. I'm Mark Calloway. Thank you. You freed me."
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, also considering the history with Bray Wyatt and Undertaker beat Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania a number of years ago, and with Bray Wyatt on a revenge tour of really righting all the wrongs that people did to him, Undertaker should be on that list. So this wouldn't be just a random attack on Undertaker. So I don't know how they don't touch this. I'm sure Vince is probably presenting it to Taker, but we'll see. Any other things that we didn't discuss you wanted to bring up? I know you have many more notes than I do, but.
I hate mixed tag matches. Ruby Riott needs a win.
Yeah.
I honestly, I really think that they're trying to build something with her as the underdog that comes up, which is good, but they really need to kick it in the ass, so to speak, because Ruby Riott, she's talented. She has a niche. She's something that you could sink your teeth into. You know, it's if you put Ruby Riott in a room, you know who Ruby Riott is. She puts eyeballs onto whatever's happening, even though they keep screwing her over. So I really, really want to see her get some wins, and I hope that this whole thing with the BS trying to get the Riott Squad back together, I want to see her break out, and I'm hoping that there's something really good for her in store. I really do. I hope Shayna Baszler's alive. I do. Aside from that, that's it for the wrestling side of stuff.
No, it's great. I'm glad you brought up Shayna Baszler too. I had a note that I didn't cross out about her. So yeah, she hasn't been seen on wrestling or on WWE TV since like mid-May. I think May 16th, May 14th versus Natalya. So I mean, there have been rumors of Vince souring on Shayna Baszler and all that kind of thing, and yeah, we'll see. I mean, the women's division certainly needs somebody different, somebody new, and Shayna Baszler has always presented that, so I hope she's on her way back as well at some point soon. It's been almost 2 months since she's been off TV, and maybe they're waiting until Extreme Rules. She'll attack Asuka. I think Asuka is probably, if they bring Shayna back, it's a shoo-in to have Asuka versus Shayna Baszler for the women's championship. So, very good. Go ahead.
Tessa Blanchard.
Yeah, true. I heard about that. Yes. I did hear about her acquisition, so to speak. So, very true.
Okay.
Alrighty. Any shout outs? I know you usually do have shout outs or extra things you'd like to mention.
Yes, if you don't mind. My friend Cameron Puryear, good friend of mine. He loves the show. He's a great guy. My boy Simon Banks, because he works hard. I see him breaking his neck every day. A restaurant named the Kooky Canuck at 87 South 2nd Street in Memphis, Tennessee, owned by Sean Danko, who's a personal friend and former employer, and a guy I miss because he was kind of like a big brother to me, and he loves pro wrestling. Something we didn't really find out till later on in life, but so that's what I got for shout outs. But you know, I miss a lot of people. I know you do too, because you're pent up. And of course, DJ Kuzmo, because he loves the show, and John Pelko and Josh Bear. But how about you? Any shout outs?
Well, I mean, not anybody specific. I mean, I always just kind of shout out generally to the listeners and thank everybody for listening, because we all know there are tons and tons and tons of wrestling podcasts out there, and we all know who the big ones are that are really tough to topple, but that's the goal.
I just feel privileged to be part of this. It makes me every day feel like I'm special. So.
Well, no, and I'm glad you're able to come on, because it's great having another voice, and it's always great talking to somebody that has knowledge of wrestling, and you can tell right away when somebody has been watching for like a year or less, or even a couple of years, it's very obvious very quickly, because it's when you talk to somebody that actually has wrestling knowledge that is your equivalent or greater, it's a much smoother conversation. There's things that you say that you don't have to go, well, they probably don't know what I'm talking about, so I don't have to say that. Like, it's just much better, and that's why it's great. I mean, you're definitely an asset to the show. There's no doubt.
Well, I appreciate that. Now, one thing before I go is before we broadcast, we talked a little bit, and I was asking about a nickname. And so I'm going to ask actually the listeners or any of the co-hosts, like, what should be my nickname? Because, you know, Mike Tenay was the professor and stuff like that, and you and I talked about this off air. But like, if you were to give me a nickname, what do you think it would be? So you put your answers on Twitter, and whoever gets the most likes on one, it's at 144Captain. Please, I'd like to know my nickname.
That's it. I mean, you heard it here first. Let's leave it up to the listeners. Hopefully, they've gone this far into the show. So,
no joke.
Well, what I'll do is, because I'm gonna produce this show, obviously after I'm done with the recording here, and I'm gonna, at the beginning of the audio, I'll pose that question at the very beginning so that everyone will hear it. So I'll ask the listeners at the beginning of the show, hey, what do you think should be his nickname? I mean, and I'll have them. You want it tweeted at you, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
At 144Captain, everybody knows it, and the other thing I want to say is, everybody, just do something for your neighbor and take care of somebody, because there are people out there who can't take care of themselves.
That's always good advice. Again, I said it last time, but there's no better time than right now to heed that advice with everything going on. That's just the craziest year in the history of at least in my life. I mean, this is just insanity. So, very good advice, and keep up with your garden. I know that you work hard on it, so continue to plant all your things, and hopefully the rain is helping out down there. And and dodge those tornadoes down there too.
Yeah, no shit. Oh, sorry. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
Yep.
Okay?
Take it easy. Have a good night.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.